Here momentarily. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. It's always good to see a full council chambers. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm grateful to be back. I missed the last meeting, and I missed it. So it's good to be back among you and among my peers here on the council. I appreciate Councilman Ivey filling in as Mayor Pro Tem in my absence, and appreciate the good work of the council and staff in my absence. Today is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. As I stated, we are here at Washington City Hall for our regular meeting. All of our meetings are broadcast live and for viewing later at washingtoncity.org/meetings. I've really enjoyed and appreciated our partnership with the Interfaith Council, and tonight we'll start our meeting off right. I'll invite Pastor Greg Wright with the Westside Baptist Church to come forward and start our meeting off.
Well, it really is an honor to be included in this and to not only pray tonight, but to pray regularly for you. And I did want to assure you that our church does bring the council members and mayor before the Lord on a rotating basis and on our Sunday mornings. And so this is something we do on a regular basis. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you for your goodness to us, and we thank you for the wonderful privilege we have of being a part of a community that seeks you and asks for your presence and blessing in this meeting. We pray for wisdom for these council members, that you would direct them as they have many decisions to make, and we pray that you would lead them in that. We pray for righteousness to prevail, and that you would give through that peace and safety to the citizens of this community. We pray, Father, that you would help them to maintain the beauty of this wonderful place and the privilege we have of being here. And so tonight we pray that you would supersede in all matters and that you'd be glorified in it. And we pray this in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. We appreciate you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, before I turn to you for approval of the agenda, I want to make note that we do have need to go to closed session, as you are aware, for one item, and that is to discuss the character or professional competence of an individual. I also would like some liberty in the agenda. I see Pam Holliday, who's a fantastic advisor to the Washington County Youth Coalition. They have prepared a proclamation. They're waiting for a few of their members who are student athletes to get here. So I'm waiting for her to give me the nod on item 4, if you just allow me a little bit of liberty there. Other than that, I'll turn to you for approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I make approval of the agenda for the September 27th council meeting.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates.
Second.
Second by Councilman Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Item 2 is announcements. The only announcement I have is that City Hall will be closed in observance of Columbus Day on October 9th. I looked through my calendar. I couldn't see anything else between now and our next meeting. I'm certain I missed something.
Mayor, I do have one item that was mailed to me by the Southern Utah Veterans Home. They're having an open house to celebrate their 10th anniversary at their Veterans Home in Ivins. That's on October 5th. From 9:30 to 1:30, it's free food, games, prizes, music, tours, and more. but to go out and see our veterans and to share our appreciation for them. I hope that some of us can take that opportunity. Again, it's October 5th and starting at 9:30 to 1:30, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. And Recorder, if you'll please put that on the council schedule. Anything else?
Yeah, we've got the event on Friday at did they change it to Veterans Park or is it still at the Relief Society?
Oh, the art
Arts-
building. I believe
the
that's
Arts
at the
Council
Relief Society home.
building,
And Councilman, does that start at 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock,
Okay,
6 to 7:30.
fantastic.
And then next Friday, October 6th, is Faith in Blue at 6 o'clock at Veterans Park. So everybody's invited to attend that. That's an event that Interfaith Council does in conjunction with our police officers.
Or can we have that added to the agenda? Or
To our calendar, yes. Recorder, you're making note and adding it to council calendar.
And then the All About Art on the 7th, that following Saturday.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilman. Anything else? Okay, item number 3 is an opportunity to declare any abstentions and or conflicts. Is there anything to declare this evening? Seeing none, we are going to move along. We're going to come back to item 4, which is the proclamation, when we're ready for that item. At this time, I'd like to invite Police Chief Jason Williams to come forward as he will present and deliver the oath of office for 2 new detectives. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, for, again, your support with the growth and changes in our department. To kick this off, just to ease some tension with some people, I think it's okay to share a joke, right? And it is appropriate, but how do you divide the sea? Or sorry, how do you divide the ocean? With a seesaw. Boom. So
You know,
we'll
I
go
got to
ahead.
just interject here. I've been Chief Williams' neighbor for many years, and as excellent of a police chief as he is, he's an even better dad, as we can see with these spot-on dad jokes tonight.
And a trying comedian. So
There we go. Thanks, Chief.
Anyhow, but yeah, tonight we'll do a swearing in for Detective Dayton Dickinson and also Josh Jonda, who will join our investigations division, and invite them to come up to do that. Go ahead and raise your arm to the square. I, and state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah. I do also solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the laws and ordinances of Washington City and will discharge the duties of detective with fidelity. Congratulations. While they're signing that, I'll invite their spouses to come up and pin their badges on. Congratulations again. Turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Chief.
They think they're getting away.
I'm not letting you off that easy, detectives. About face, Detective Dickinson, Detective Janda, both of you. Um, both of you are valuable part of this police department, and you're seasoned in patrol and other duties. Let's start with you, Detective Dickinson. If you'd just come forward and just talk a little bit about come forward to the mic here now, and just talk to us a little bit about your service to this point within the department and what this opportunity means to you to serve with this assignment as detective in the investigations unit.
Sure. Wow. That's a lot. So I've been with the Washington City Police Department for 6.5 years or so, serving at the patrol unit. And yeah, this is definitely a great opportunity to serve the community and develop some skills in the detective investigation. And yeah, I have lots to learn and excited to grow and serve the community in that way.
That's great. And I see the person your wife, I'm guessing, that pinned the badge on. Would you come forward? You can hand the phone off to your daughter. I think one thing that we as the elected officials here, we recognize that it's family effort when it comes to public safety. Can you just share with this council and this crowd, what it means what it means to you to see your husband progress, and for this promotion and this opportunity, what he means to you, and what this opportunity means?
I was not told I was going to give a speech, or else maybe I would not have come. But
We need to
okay.
know Mayor Staley.
No, I am super proud of him and very supportive of him. And like every time that he likes to advance and he loves to move forward and loves to learn new things, and any way that he can help the community, he's always willing to do so. So as his family, we're in full support, and we're super happy and proud of him that he's going to be moving forward into this investigation department. So yeah,
Love
we're
it.
stoked.
Thank you both. We appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, Detective Janda, if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of your background and with the department and what this opportunity means to you as well.
Surely. Can she speak for me?
I think I see some in the back that unless I get a hard no.
Well, anybody could put it more eloquently than myself. So I'm Josh Jonda. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years. I've been here with Washington City for going on 3 years. I've served in patrol. I've served as a field training officer, and spent my last 3 years on patrol. I'm excited to move into this position and have this opportunity to broaden my horizons and my skill sets and keep doing what I love.
That's awesome. We really appreciate you. It's a long walk. What are you thinking back there? It's okay. Well, again, let me just express our gratitude to you, Detective Jonda, and to your family. Like I said, we recognize that the entire family sacrifices and supports for these officers that put their life on the line every day. And so just your contribution for your families doesn't go unnoticed, and we're really proud of you. Let's get a picture. Let's start with all of the officers here, with the detectives in the middle, with the council, and then we'll get one more picture with families, okay?
Thank you.
We'll invite all law enforcement members up here to the front, please.
Families, if you come and join too, so police officers stay up here. Let's have families join.
Just families and all officers, or families with the new detectives?
Families come out now.
Okay. She's up here now. She can talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to item number 6, the consent agenda. The consent agenda consisting of the approval of the minutes from the city council meetings of 9/13/23 and a final plat amendment to the final plat for Rio Virgin Industrial Park, lots 38 and 39, located at 1502 East Washington Dam Road. Council, is there any brief clarifications on the consent agenda? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Mayor, I've read the minutes and I have also reviewed the final plat, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Go ahead, Councilman.
You make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
We have a motion by Councilman Ivey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. We're going to move on to a proclamation. I see Pam Holiday and Miss Belknap, if I'm right. Who's going to present this? And let me read this too. This is fantastic. We have a long tradition here in Washington City in working with the Washington County Youth Coalition. History that includes even updating and amending ordinances that prevent drug abuse, alcohol abuse, etc. So this is a great group. And so tonight they approached me a month or so ago, and they're doing this county-wide. This is a proclamation for prevention, the Washington County Youth Prevention Coalition and the Washington County Youth Coalition for an alcohol-free year. That was a mouthful. Is it Macy? Do I remember your first name now? Belknap. Bailey Belknap, okay. Go ahead and take this item.
All right, good evening, Washington City Council. We are the Washington County Youth Coalition, and as volunteer high school students within the county, we are here to request your support in our mission towards a healthy community. So my name is Maylee Belknap, and I'm a junior at Crimson Cliffs High School. I was just at a cross-country meet, and the second I passed that last finish line, I came over here. So let me catch my breath. But thank you guys for having us, and today we are presenting you and would like to renew the alcohol-free school year proclamation for the academic year 2023 to 24. The proclamation reads as, whereas the Washington County Prevention Coalition and the Washington County Youth Coalition have designed the upcoming school year as an alcohol-free year for youth, sponsored by Reach for Hope and Southwest Prevention, a school year to set clear rules and expectations about no underage drinking. Whereas alcohol used by those under the age of 21 negatively affects their health and safety, and thus the safety and well-being of all those living and working in the communities of Washington County. Whereas teens who use alcohol often progress to addictive behavior in later life and are at much higher risk for developing mental illnesses as adults. And whereas addictive behaviors and mental illnesses also greatly increase the risk of suicide, Whereas underage drinking is a major public health problem that negatively impacts the brain development of our young people, causing a higher probability of early alcohol addiction, alcohol-related traffic incidents, and brain impairment. Whereas, under the law, it is illegal for a minor to purchase, possess, or consume any alcoholic beverage, and it is illegal and punishable for anyone to sell, offer to sell, or furnish alcohol to a minor. Whereas the mayors of St. George City, Washington City, Hurricane City, Hilldale City, Ivan City, and Santa Clara City, in addition to the commissioners of Washington City and the state of Utah, are committed to the development of a major statewide public information campaign with the overall objectives of changing social norms regarding depression, suicide ideation, underage drinking, and risky behaviors. Whereas we commend the overwhelming majority of our young people who are drug and alcohol free, and we desire all of our youth to be drug and alcohol free, so to develop in a healthy society. Now, therefore, we as mayors and am I supposed to read this part? Sorry. We as mayors and commissioners hereby proclaim our support and offer an invitation to the entire community to help encourage family bonding and reduce underage drinking in order to improve the health and safety of all youth and adults in Washington County. We invite all members of our community, including individuals, families, government, schools, religious, and civic organizations, to participate in and sponsor activities that will heighten awareness regarding the dangers of underage drinking to young people's health and safety, and will strengthen their ability and desire to refuse to drink alcohol. Whereas we declare the 2023 to 24 school year as an alcohol-free school year for youth to bring awareness to risky behaviors, underage drinking, and promote the bringings of family together. Thank you.
Maylee, this is a fantastic proclamation, and I'm honored to sign this. Can you give us just a little bit of a background on how this proclamation came about, and then also speak to a little bit that each of you are doing in your various schools to promote an alcohol-free school year?
Yeah, so our Washington County Youth Coalition, we have data from the Prevention Center of youth our ages, and so we really can relate to these groups, and that is why in our schools we know what maybe the kind of support that our students are looking for. So we have many events, things like Kite Festival and Staley Farms booths, but also presentations at elementary schools where we will teach them about the Red Ribbon Week traditions. Yes, and we'll have posters up, and we do have our support, and yeah.
How many are on your youth coalition this year?
I think this year we had maybe like 80.
It's a big group.
People.
That's grown a lot.
Yes, it's grown a lot this year. So from Crimson, I think we have about 20, same as Pineview. So it's pretty well dispersed and everything. So.
Okay. And then before I sign the proclamation, Pam, can you just come up for just a minute? This is Pam Holiday. She deserves a round of applause for. First of all, thank you for the work that you do with this group. It makes a difference. I've seen this. We've seen this group year over year, and you're always doing something positive. Would you just speak briefly to the recent coordination you had with Washington City at our community center? And could you tell just a little bit about? I love what you've done there, and I appreciate your work with us. Can you just talk to a little bit about what that is and what you hope that will result in?
Yes. So we've had the great honor and privilege to be working with the city. And so we have a Washington County Youth Coalition and a Washington Adult Coalition. And some of City Council, sits on our membership as well. And so we have really appreciated the relationship and the support that we get from your city, and we wanted to bring one of the state's initiatives called Parents Empowered to the community of Washington City. And with your support and your approval, we've been able to work with the Recreation Center.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who have not seen it yet, our partnership has resulted in an amazing mural and parents empowered messaging that you can see throughout the rec center.
It's fantastic. If you haven't been up there, next time you're at the community center walking the track, and if you're not going, you should go. It's really cool the way that Parents Empowered and this group designed the mural, but it looks like the lanes of the track kind of come up into the wall in that particular area, and just gives a great message for parents and adults to talk to youth. So I think that's part of the mission too. Thank you for all you're doing. Do you want me to sign that now?
Yeah, absolutely. And then if we can get a picture with the entire city council, that would be amazing.
That would be fantastic. Let's all come down now. I'll sign it and then we'll get the picture.
Thank you.
Let's get a little handshake here. All right, let's hold this together here.
Thank you.
One more picture? One more picture? Okay, let's do one more. Let's do one more. Give this back to you because we need a few more signatures.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. PR. Thank you.
All right, now we have to do some official city business. That's official business, that's important business, but we have more business that's not nearly as fulfilling as that kind of thing. So item 7, conditional use permit. 7A, this is consideration to approve conditional use permit C-23-07 for an electric vehicle charging station at Black Bear Diner located at 965 Hoodoo Way, just off exit 13. The applicant is Solar Zing, close enough, LLC. And our city planner, Eldon Gibb, will present on this item. Eldon.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. On September 16th, 2016, Washington City approved the conditional use permit for Black Bear Diner. At this time, the applicant is proposing to amend the conditional use permit by adding up to 3 electrical vehicle charging stations, which would be able to charge 6 vehicles at one time. And that's just to the north of the building there. These charging stations would be placed on the north side of the building as shown in the exhibit. The applicant is also proposing to install shade canopies for the parking stalls along the perimeter of the parking lot. These shade structures will house solar panels that will feed the electric vehicle charging stations and could also feed the existing business. The electric vehicle charging stations and shade canopies with solar panels will be a benefit to the business, and staff feels if the solar panels can be hidden by a parapet wall so that the solar panels are not visible, and the equipment being placed by the RV parking can be screened with a block wall and wrought iron gates, staff is comfortable with the proposed plan. Planning Commission reviewed this request on September 20th, 2023, and unanimously recommended approval of C-23-07, allowing the electric vehicle charging stations and the shade canopies to be built as shown in the exhibits with the findings and conditions attached to the report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Council, do you have questions for Eldon?
Yeah, Eldon, with one of the conditions that you guys have requested with the parapet, I mean, how tall is that? Is that a foot? Is it 3 feet? Like, I know how solar panels angles have to be, and I'm concerned it might get super tall if that's a condition we're requiring on them, and it might make it look worse than not having it at all. So that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Our concern was that we would only see the black panel, solar panel, which we felt like we didn't want to see. The canopy's gonna be angled, so the parapet wall would match. You know, if it's 6 inches, 12 inches, it'll match that angle all the way around.
But so like a question I have is, it depends on which side the canopies are. And maybe this isn't a question for you, because you got to face them south, the panels. And so if the angle of the canopy is a different direction, it might, I just don't know how it's going to all work. And it's not shown here in the plan of what the condition we're requesting of them. I just don't know if we've got the full item there. I just don't know what that is. Maybe the applicant can answer that question.
Yeah, let's get the applicant to clear that up.
Any further questions for staff before we invite the applicant up?
I have one more, and it's a clarifying question on the usage. So are these EV charges being charged off the current power that's there, or is the solar going to take care of all of it 100%?
I understood the solar was gonna 100% feed that, but I'll defer to the applicant on that.
So is there a backup that backs it up just in case? And I'll let the applicant answer, but that's the question I have, is if solar, say we have some cloudy months and it's not working, or days, I just don't know that information. So that's what I'm after.
Leif, if you'd come forward, introduce yourself and your partner if needed, and address the councilman's questions.
Sure, those are great questions. My name is Leif Olson with Solar Zing and EV3. EV3 is the operator of the charging station itself. To respond to the first question that you had regarding the parapet wall and the angles of the awnings themselves, the carports themselves. So they're not at a like a 30-degree angle. They're at a very slight angle, so that the parapet wall, it will be sitting up in some cases, could possibly up to a foot, and the solar panels will be down in. So to hide the vision of the panel themselves. That actual panel, that actual carport right there is actually face the wrong direction, because it'll be actually tilted the opposite direction, so you won't see it at all, so it'll be fine. The ones on the opposite side will be tilted a little bit, so they'll be like this. The ones on the north side will be
so they'll all be tilted towards
slightly.
They'll all be tilted toward the south.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So they'll be tilted toward the south. So that answers my first question. And You said it'd be like, so what degree angle is the solar panel placed at?
About 10-degree angle.
So 10 degrees in however many
It's
feet.
not the perfect angle. We'd love them at 30, right? That would be the ideal angle.
But you don't
can't
plan
do
on taking the solar panel and adding more than what the pitch of the.
Yeah, no, that's.
You're not adding another 20 on top of the 10 that the
correct. Yeah,
shade cover is.
It's just with the amount that's on there currently and in the permit for the power company. To answer the next question, which was regarding solar, traditional power from the power company, this is a grid-tied system. So ADS Tech has a battery backup, a battery that comes with it. It's a 150 kilowatt battery that buffers the power from the grid. So it takes a trickle charge from the grid, but dispenses from the battery to the car a higher amount of power, so that it's not taking the power into peak demand. So the ADS Tech is a German technology. We think it's the finest technology in the country with the research that we've done to provide that particular system to protect the grid, to be grid friendly. We also have ESSs, which is a energy storage system that will contain energy as well from the solar. So it stores energy up to 1 megawatt of solar, and then can be used to charge the ADS Tech units, which will then deploy to the car. So that is utilizing the solar production at as efficiently as we can, to provide the power for that unit. We also, we have not proposed this yet, but this is some exciting technology that has come, in front of us. There, that battery backup systems, and the size of these systems, the megawatt is a fairly large amount of power, and can be, we're planning on allowing Washington City Power, if they have a need for that power, that they're welcome to that power to buy that power back out of that storage during peak demand when their costs are extremely high. So it'll kind of help try to balance some costs of power for the city as well. So we're excited about the system.
How long does it take to charge an average vehicle?
So with this particular charger is a 320 kilowatt charger. If there is only one car in the stall, he's going to get 320 kilowatts, depending on the car and the size of the battery, and there's lots of variations in there. But to give you the top car size battery is a Porsche Taycan. So if a Porsche Taycan pulled in there, he could charge 80% of the battery in about 20 minutes. So it's a lot of power. It's going to range depend on, from there down. You could pull a Chevy Bolt in there, isn't going to accept that much power, and so it might take 45 minutes to charge.
So a couple of years ago, I was driving down the road and I saw a vehicle driving down the road with a gas pump nozzle dangling from the filler tube. So talk to us about safety, how, if someone forgets that, or, there's going to be kids that come in and out of that restaurant, residents will be there. Just talk to us about the safety, seeing that I don't know a thing about charging stations.
The cords themselves are they're designed not to deploy any energy unless they're actually plugged in. Once they're released from the port that they're plugging into, they no longer have power that's available to electrocute anybody from that standpoint. So there has not been a report of anybody being electrocuted as of yet. So we feel very confident about that. And then also, to the extent where the battery is located, that battery has a barrier that's around it, and each one of those batteries has a fire suppression system built into it, along with AC and heat, so that it's climate controlled to control each individual battery within that packet.
So if it were ripped out, then there would be a safety device at the unit itself.
Say that again.
So you said that if the unit is unplugged, then it stops the flow of electricity. Correct. But let's say that happened and it ripped it out of the unit, there'd be a safety feature at the unit itself.
Correct. They have shutoffs on them to shut power off directly from the charging unit, the ADS Tech unit.
I assumed that was true, but better ask. Thank you.
Excellent questions, Council. Appreciate your responses, Mr. Olson. Further questions for the applicant? Clarification, Jeremy.
I just want to make a clarifying comment, and I'm sure Mr. Olson understands this, but just so everybody recognizes, there were a lot of technical drawings included with your packet, but this is the zoning approval, and this will give Mr. Olson the opportunity to work with the power company to get those construction drawings approved. I just want to make sure everybody recognizes we're not up here approving the technology or the construction drawings.
We have some work still to do with the power company.
Just want to make sure
they're fantastic, and we're working through all of those engineered plans.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Olson. Council, further discussion and or a motion on amending this conditional use permit? It's actually approval of a conditional use permit.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve conditional use permit C-23-07 for an electric vehicle charging station at Black Bear Diner.
Have a motion made by Councilman Coates.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Martinson. Let's go roll call on this. Henderson?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
That is approved unanimously. Congratulations, and we look forward to charging stations there at the Black Bear Diner. And you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. Hi. Thanks, guys.
I needed that. That'd be 5 miles.
Okay. No, Councilman Ivy is not going to charge his e-bike there, city manager. Okay.
My e-bikes have motors and.
Okay. Item 7B, this is consideration to approve conditional use permit C-23-10 for a commercial restaurant building located at the northeast corner of Primavera Road and Buena Vista Boulevard. The applicant is Desert Flower and Galloway and Company. Once again, City Planner Eldon Gibb will present to the council on this item. Eldon.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Any proposed projects along Buena Vista Boulevard require a conditional use permit. And this application is on Buena Vista Boulevard. The applicant is wishing to develop a new quick serve restaurant cafe on the property. Property is currently zoned C2 and consists of 1.17 acres. The zoning to the north, east, and west is C2 with Buena Vista Boulevard and I-15 to the south. Proposed Panera Bread restaurant has a building footprint of 3,860 square feet, with approximately half of this area being used to seat customers. There's a double lane drive-through which will help with vehicle stacking and traffic flow in the area. There's also an area for customers to eat outdoors. The exterior elevations consist of brick masonry, stucco, wood grain cladding, and metal coping. The new building will be required to meet the standards as outlined in the city ordinance and adopted building and fire codes. Staff feels that if these requirements can be met, then the request should be granted for the proposed new commercial development at this location. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on September 20th, 2023, and unanimously recommended approval of C-23-10, allowing for a new quick serve restaurant to be built at 876 West Buena Vista Boulevard. And that was based on the findings and conditions attached to the report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Council, questions for the city planner? Council, is there a need for the applicant to come forward? Any questions for the applicant? All right, I'll allow for further discussion and or a motion on item 7B.
Mayor, can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
Possibly a motion. I just want the city manager and department heads to know how nice it is to have their comments on the project flow card. Those are very helpful in us knowing that each one's looked at them. And I just want to, Mayor, I'd just like to mention the one that was written by Rusty Hughes, our Economic Development Director. She says, retail sales meets the city's increased sales tax generation objective. I really appreciate the fact that our city staff has doubled down on understanding that that's important to our city to increase our sales tax base so that we can keep our taxes low for our citizens. Yeah. I appreciate that effort, Mayor.
Well said, Councilman. And I'll just piggyback onto your comments too. When you walked in, you see a little QR code on the door. And any of those in attendance, if you scan that and click on the QR code, you're able to pull up the agenda. And in that agenda, you can also link to the same packet that the council views as they consider each of these items. So, and we appreciate you all being here for this tonight. And yes, Rusty does a fantastic job. We're looking forward to Panera Bread. Council, looks like we're ready for a motion. Who would like to make that?
Mayor, I can do that. I move that we approve a conditional use permit C-23-10 for a commercial restaurant building located at the northeast corner of Primavera Road and Buena Vista Boulevard.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Councilmember Casperson. Let's go roll call on this. Coates.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
That is approved unanimously. Thank you for being here, applicant. We appreciate your excellent work. You get a gold star for the night, okay? And you're also excused. There's no need for you to stay for other items, unless you'd like to. Item 8 is ordinances. This is 8A, consideration to approve an ordinance for City Code Amendment Title 8, Chapter 9, Landscape and Water Conservation. And before I turn this to Legislative Affairs Officer Jordan Hess, I'd just like to welcome and recognize Washington County Water Conservancy District Conservation Manager Doug Bellows. We appreciate you being here tonight as a resource for the council as well. At this time, I'll invite Mr. Hess to come forward and present to the council on this amendment to our ordinance.
In the spirit of Chief Williams, I'm going to start with a joke. Why does water never laugh at jokes? It's not a fan of dry humor.
Okay.
I know.
You got to take that to the conservation. Mayor, sorry, I've got to tell
Let's
my
just
joke.
move on to item
No,
nine.
I want to joke.
We're off the rails
Council,
here.
can I tell a joke? I got
I
to.
make a motion that we don't tell any more jokes.
One more, please.
Second.
It's a water joke.
I'll allow the councilman's personal privilege. Go ahead.
Thank you. What did the fish say when it hit the wall? Damn.
Okay.
That's the only water joke.
Please
At
bring
least
this,
I kept mine PG.
please bring this back on track here, Jordan.
A couple weeks ago, the legislature came down to Washington County for the first time ever. They held their interim meetings off of the Wasatch Front, and they held a long-term planning session with all of the state legislature. One of the issues that they are most concerned about is an issue we're all concerned about, and that is water. They hear it, we hear it, the Conservancy District hears it, our Planning Commission hears about our residents' concerns about water all the time. Now, the Water Conservancy District, they work closely with the state, and a lot of the recommendations that they suggest for the municipalities come from the state level. Washington City has done a phenomenal job with water conservation over the last year. The new rebate program has been in effect this past year, funded by the state legislature, and that allows someone to remove their turf and replace it with water-wise landscaping, and they can qualify for a $2 per square foot rebate. Washington City accounts for 1% of the state's population, yet we account for 10% of the state's grass removal. So our city is punching. Our city and its residents are punching well above our weight when it comes to water conservation. Now, in order, however, for us to continue to offer that rebate, we have to adopt certain standards. And so last fall, as you all recall, we passed a landscape and water ordinance, and the Conservancy District had a couple of tweaks that we need to make to that ordinance in order to stay in compliance and therefore allow our residents to take advantage of the rebate program. So you've got the changes in your packet. I also have hard copies if any of you need it. All of the changes are in blue, and there weren't very many of them, and we've actually worked through a couple of issues both at the Planning Commission level, and then I've had individual council members that have worked with me to fix a couple of concerns. But I'm happy to go through all of these one by one if you would like. Like I said, everything in black is our existing ordinance, and everything in blue are the changes that we need to adopt in order to remain in compliance.
So Jordan, do we have the stuff that was taken out of our ordinance?
So there's nothing that's been taken out other than a couple of the changes we made have now been deleted. So the changes that were taken out were never in the original ordinance.
So just a question is that I thought we had a different square footage for lawn than they did.
So that is, yes, that is a change. And so it's in blue. That's why it's in blue, because their square footage is different than ours. We keep the 8% that we originally had, but we add the lots less than 7,500 square feet are allowed up to 600 square feet of grass. So that is an addition to, we just had the 8%, and this is on top of that.
So the other question that I had that I'll admit I'm struggling with is item C. says no, not less than 10 feet from areas dedicated to vehicle use such as streets or parking lot. So my concern with that is that I'm going to use my house as an example. I have my street, which then becomes sidewalk. What is defined as the street? Is it the asphalt? Is it the back of the sidewalk? If it's the other question I have is, I have grass right to my sidewalk, and I think people should be able to have grass to their sidewalk. That's a border they should be able to use. So I'm struggling with that 10 foot.
Okay.
To understand, and I'd like some history.
Are you in the 8-9-2, the
definitions
under the
item C?
Yep, under the active recreation area, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question I have is, and it has to come with the property, personal property, right? Does this make sense? Well, I don't see where the 10 feet makes sense unless you're talking sports fields. But on a personal lot, we should be able to put grass up to the sidewalk, put grass up to our driveways. Those are borders that we should be able to connect to. And so that's where I'm struggling.
I think that's the question. And Jordan, can you is that in regards to sports areas or on personal lawns?
So
can I,
Councilman Henderson.
So if you go down to single family dwellings, landscape standards, it's essentially the same thing. It says grass is also prohibited within 10 feet of a roadway. What is the definition of a roadway? Is it the sidewalk? Is it the asphalt? Does that also include, does a roadway mean your driveway? What's the definition?
Great. And on that, with that being a technical question, I think that Doug from the Water District can address that one, because I'm not sure if they mean sidewalk or roadway myself, but.
So I can tell the council is very prepared on this item. If you're okay, Jordan, I'll invite Mr. Bellows to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Doug Bennett. I'm the conservation.
Bennett, I'm sorry. I called you the wrong last name.
That's all right. Mayor.
I'm getting close. I called Bailey, and I called Bennett Bellows. I know a Doug Bellows. He lives in my neighborhood, but I know you're Doug Bennett. I'm sorry about that.
So I'm the conservation manager for the Water Conservancy District. To answer your, if you don't mind, Mayor, if I can address the councilors with each of their questions. The intent of that, especially where we were talking about active recreation areas, the intention was that you would not want your children to actively play within 10 feet of a street. So that was intended to be primarily for parks or pocket parks or places where children would be turned loose. The closer that turf grass comes to the street, the less usable it actually becomes, because people are reluctant to use the entirety of it. When it comes to any other, most of those other measures are intended to keep water from running into the street. So we all know that if you have a lawn in front, and I'm sure you can look in your neighborhood and see that some of them are on a slope, and there are some neighbors who, when they water, the water always runs into the street and down the curb. By creating more of a buffer area, you typically have a 6-foot area anyway between the parkway, the sidewalk, and where your landscaping would begin. We're asking that that be a 10-foot distance between the roadway and where irrigated turf grass begins, which gives us additional buffer to be able to prevent any of that runoff.
So does that mean, so does the roadway start at the back of the sidewalk or down at the asphalt?
Well, typically I would think of the roadway as the area that was open to vehicular traffic, and that would be the street curb.
Okay.
So I might agree with you on if it's a recreation area. I think that makes sense. But on a single family lot, every single lot in my neighborhood, the grass goes to the sidewalk.
Well,
and so that's where I'm struggling. Like I just want to make sure that we don't infringe on people's property rights. I mean, it's getting real nitpicky when they have 20 feet of lawn and you say, well, half of it you can't put in grass if you wanted to.
Councilman Coates, it's important to distinguish that this will be for homes moving forward with an effective date of next year. So because these people only have 8% turf grass, most of them are going to want that turf grass in their backyards anyway. We're probably going to see a lot more water efficient landscapes in front yards. We also work very closely with the Southern Utah Home Builders Association. We want to make sure that people who develop these new neighborhoods understood what was in here, how it impacts them. Home builders are usually responsible for putting in the front yards. And in most cases, we anticipate the home builder is going to do very water efficient front yards and reserve that grass allocation for the homeowner to make the choices of what they want to do in their backyard. So it's likely that we'll see fewer of those lawns. Having come run these programs for almost 30 years now, I will also say that I've dealt with an awful lot of homeowners. I know that I know that many of our cities have a policy and code that says you may not allow water to run down the street, and that's considered wasting water. And when we reach out to people and say you're in violation of the code, your water's running down the block, they'll go, well, how am I supposed to prevent that? The lawn comes right up to the curb. So, and many of them inherited that situation. So we are trying to prevent that, putting them in that position.
And I see where you're coming from, but I just don't think I don't think it's appropriate to regulate that piece for me. Is to regulate at 10 feet. I think if they want to choose their 8% or 1,500 square foot of lawn, they can put it wherever they want. And we have to work diligently to get them to not let it run off. I mean, I have neighbors that do, and I go talk to them. I watch my water very closely because I don't want to waste water on my lawn. I want to make sure it hits the lawn and stays there. So that's where I'm at with it. I just struggle with taking away people's property rights to be able to put landscaping where they want.
So, Mr. Bennett, is there any consideration for this 10-foot setback because of the heat index created by the asphalt and the heat that's held within? It's going to take more water to keep the grass green there. Is that any type of a consideration at all?
I think there's a misunderstanding about what actually creates heat island and how we abate it. So for the most part, turf grass is not a heat island abatement tool to the extent that trees are. And so we're strongly encouraging people to use more trees in their landscaping. The great thing about trees, if I were to take you out, we had a 111-degree day last summer, right? If we were to go out on that 111-degree day and I offered you a lawn, exposed lawn, or the shade of a tree, you would always choose the shade of the tree. And the beauty of the shade of the tree is it has the ability to shade that sidewalk, your driveway, the structure of your home. And so really what creates heat island is not the landscape choices we make, it's the development choices we make. It's the roadway, the sidewalk, the building, the wall. The best thing we can do to abate it is ensure that we have adequate trees and an overhead canopy in our city.
But in my
and
case,
this ordinance encourages.
But my question is more specifically, there's no tree and you have grass. Is that a consideration because of the higher heat that's going to be held within the asphalt and sidewalk? Is that a consideration, the 10 feet, or should we not even consider it?
No, that was not a consideration.
Okay,
The intent was merely to prevent runoff into the roadway.
So the most common setback is 20 feet in Washington, is that correct? And so if we do a 10-foot no grass zone from the front, and then, typically nobody wants to put grass closer than 4 feet to their foundation. And some of the geotechs in some of the neighborhoods want it to be, 6 to 8 feet away. Right. With the other regulation that says you can't put grass in a strip that's 8 feet or less, then essentially if we approve this, most people won't be able to put grass in their front yard just because of the regulations. And so I'm kind of with Councilman Coates. I mean, I'm all for water conservation, and I'm okay with regulating the amount of lawn, but it seems to be getting a little bit, I don't know. It's kind of getting under my skin a little bit just because we seem to be going a little too far with it, I mean, I don't care if somebody puts their 700 square feet in their front yard or their backyard. And I just don't like the government, telling people where and when they can put their grass in. So that's just where I'm at. I'm right where Councilman Coates is. I'm a believer in water conservation, but it almost is pushing people too far, and when you push people too far, they start losing enthusiasm for conservation, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I'm a big proponent of conservation, but sometimes when we push it too far, it makes me lose my enthusiasm. So
just to clarify, the 8-foot rule is intended, there are only sprinklers that can be effective within 8 feet or greater distance. So when you get these very narrow strips, there's going to be a lot of overspray and a lot of waste. That rule has been specified by the state of Utah as being a requirement of our standards so that we can receive any state funds for these programs.
Right, I understand that, but when we put all these rules together, it essentially says you can't put grass in your front yard. So that's where I have a little bit of a problem with it.
That would perhaps be an issue on a very small lot, but perhaps not on the common 10,000 square foot lot in Washington County.
I'd agree with you, but most of our lots now are small. Like we're getting smaller and smaller because of cost. I mean, we're seeing more 6,000 square foot lots than ever before. You know, so these are the things that I'm seeing as well. That's the big one for me. I mean, if we're done with that conversation, I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about it. I just have a clarifying question on another one.
Let me ask a clarifying question if I could on this item, and thank you for being here, Mr. Bennett. I appreciate your willingness to come speak to us. If there are certain items that are deal breakers for the state that make us not qualified for state funds to help remove turf grass, if the city did choose to go that direction and we left the no less than 10 feet in an active recreation area, so a play area that was not somebody's front yard, and the council chose to take it out of C that is the single family dwellings, would that or would that not make us ineligible? I mean, I'm just trying to understand where the line might be there.
That could jeopardize Washington City's residents' eligibility for the program. Right now, we do not issue rebates in Hurricane because Hurricane has some features of their landscape ordinance that don't comply with the current standards of the district or with the state. The state recently excluded Ivans, which I think is very serious about water conservation, because they used the term narrow turf areas and did not specifically prescribe 8 feet. And so the state, after reading their ordinance, said they are no longer eligible for these funds. I want to remind the council, we have, this program alone that we're hoping to have the state funds for generates about $4 million per year in economic activity in the region from people choosing voluntarily to make these changes. The state obviously put some hooks on the money, and some of those hooks we're having to deal with here. The other challenge is we're trying to work with 7 municipal entities and get them to the same place so that we can have money available for all of those entities without having to explain to customers in one jurisdiction, oh, that program you heard about on the radio is not available to you. But if you lived across the street or on the other side of this road, you would live in a place you can have it.
So can I ask a question? Is that 10 feet in the residential, I'm not talking about the,
active recreation.
Yeah, that. I'm talking about for single family homes. Is that something that the state came down with, or is that something that the water district came down with?
The district adopted that.
Okay.
For the purpose of keeping water out of the road.
Okay. So if we decided to pass everything except for that, would we be in jeopardy of losing our?
You would not be in compliance with the standards adopted by the board of the water district.
Okay.
And if you were to ask, you can approach the water district and ask for an exemption from those standards. There's the potential, however, because the way the state policy works is the district adopts standards, and if everyone complies with them, they can have state money. So as soon as we issue the exemption, we still run the risk that the state will say, well, you exempted them for that, and therefore we're not going to provide any state funds.
Okay, thank you.
It's a tight spot. I'm between a rock and a hard place sometimes. And I understand every city has its own culture. It has its own desires. It wants to exercise its own judgment and do things for its own citizens. We're trying to come up with common elements that work for all 7 cities. And we did visit with all 7 city staff when we developed this, and I didn't have a single city that expressed concern about this 10-foot rule.
Have you talked to other city councils about this, or are we the first one?
No, sir. We just spoke to staff. So in your case, we met with your planning department and with your utility department.
Perfect.
You know, I think that what's kind of interesting about this discussion is how the state complains about the federal government giving them money and tying certain restrictions to it. And now, you know, we're a municipal complaining about the state being tied. And I would just say that, you know, our staff certainly has their directives and what they work with. The council is directly responsible to the citizens themselves. And I would consider in the future that maybe having those conversations early on with city councils, it would help a little bit in bringing these forward and be more successful. I think what's hard for me to stomach in this is that I think that our ordinance that we've already passed addresses this quite well. And the hard part is we can't account for how this is going to impact every lot or every property owner within our city. And it could negatively affect them even having any grasses at all, as was stated. And I guess what I'm trying to do is just share my feelings that, you know, property rights are fundamental to what we are and being Americans. And this seems like it kind of flies in the face of that. I think we've already passed an ordinance, and I think that addresses very well what we're trying to do in our city. And if it takes us out of compliance, then we need to probably go to work and try to address a bigger issue.
Can I jump in, Council? And I love the passion, and I sit on the Washington County Water Conservancy District Board, and so my vote was unanimous with my fellow members and the Board of Trustees there in favor of the updated standards. And so I see what you're saying. Let me just, with all due respect, let me just kind of share another perspective. Certainly in Washington City, we have our own water sources. We have wells and we have water sources that we use. And we may have a few minor additional sources that we can develop within our own city, but as it stands, we are currently 100% reliant upon Conservancy District resources for the water that we depend on for life and livelihood. And so while I appreciate the fact my grass currently goes to my sidewalk, I would not be in compliance with this home, but I built my home 17 years ago, right? Like Councilman Coates, I watch that app all the time with how much water I'm using, and I don't try to go over it. But I think Mr. Bennett made a great point when he clarified that, and look, this council, with Jordan's help, you know, we've led out not only in the county but in the state in water conservation. You were the first to adopt this ordinance, and you took an ordinance that needed a lot of work, and you really cleaned it up, and you got something that found that balance between water conservation and property rights. But the point that I want to make is simply this: is new construction is entirely dependent on the Water Conservancy District for this resource. We've allocated the entirety of the water that we control. So any new water, we don't have the ability to provide them the water. And gratefully, because other cities don't have the partnership that we do, we were very fortunate to have the partnership with the Washington County Water Conservancy District. And I get it, I get that this is tough, but we would not be able to approve any new construction without the partnership that we have with them. So, and I appreciate Doug. I know these are tough, and I know this is maybe the first council you've been before, and I recognize as mayor that I wanted my council to hear it first. I wanted them to chew on it first, but you have a track record of doing this with the Southern Nevada Conservancy District, and you know what it takes for communities to be able to continue to survive and thrive. And so I just want you to hear that, because I'm not telling you how to vote, and I respect what you're saying, and in some respects I get it. I'm just saying we don't have the resource, and like Jordan said, we're 1% of the population. 10% of the turf removed statewide has been right here in this community, and if we don't, I mean, that's really the jeopardy that is if we can't come to an agreement in meeting district and state guidelines, then the jeopardy is that program ceases. I think it's in October or whenever. So I just want you to consider that as well, council, with all due respect. and maybe just a hint of defensiveness being on the board that approved some of the guidelines.
Well, let me just state, Mayor, I appreciate that insight, and we know the Conservancy District is a partner of ours. We're working with you. We understand that they're there. I feel like if you want us to approve it, you should work more with us as a council. Like, we don't, I mean, I know we have the mayor on the board, but we never saw it. We're the ones that have to present, and we're doing so much. And if you're going to disqualify us for one little change, I'm just appalled by that they would disqualify us because we disagree with one little item. We're not saying don't do this. We're just going to do whatever we want. We're just saying, hey, they should be able to do what they want on their property, and they're still meeting the grass. I just can't believe we'd be disqualified because the Conservancy District thought that it should be something, and they're mandating it on the cities. That's where I
understand. Just to clarify, the state mandates that all the cities must comply with the standards developed by the Conservancy District. So it wouldn't be, while we felt, even when this came to us after we were already issuing rebates, but when they came to us and the state said, we just read Ivan's ordinance, they don't qualify. It says narrow areas, not 8 feet. And they cut us off from that. And I don't have that option. What I can tell you is I will have no state funds available if Washington does not choose to adopt the measures that have been presented in the water efficiency standards. But Mayor Staley really hits the nail on the head. The water supplies in this region are very scarce. They're very constrained. Right now, these programs are producing water at about less than half of the cost of developing new resources, but we also don't have options of developing new resources. The resources that we have in our 20-year plan are more than $1 billion undertaking to develop our reuse systems and so forth, but those measures are distant in the future. It takes quite a long time to build those types of facilities. We really have to make conservation the tip of the spear right now. I take my job quite seriously. I mean, I don't consider it something, I'm not here for a paycheck. I'm here to protect the water resources, to ensure that every citizen, whether they came here 5 generations ago or 5 days ago to Washington County, is going to have a sustainable, reliable water supply. And right now, conservation is the only tool that we have to ensure that until those new resources come online. And they're going to be years out from here.
I agree with you 100%. I think we're all on board, but I don't feel like we should dictate how they conservate on their private property. That's how I feel. If they want to do, we're maxing out. We agree with you on the grass. We agree with you on landscaping and how you do that. But I don't want to tell a guy you can't put a grass in a certain spot. Like, if someone told me that, I'd be like, whatever, I'll do whatever I want. Because I'll abide by your rules of you only so much grass, because that's conserving. But if they tell me I can't put it against my sidewalk, that seems like it's like a little over-regulation to me. But
So we're not here for the paycheck either, so I think we're all on the same page. We're here to protect.
Hey, and Doug, we're grateful that you didn't retire, which you could have done very comfortably down there. So thank you for taking on Southern Utah.
Yes.
As we appreciate all the valuable insight you bring, Councilman.
Yeah, so I appreciate that statement. So I think the holdup here is dictating where people can put their grass. What if the compromise was that grass is also prohibited within 10 feet of a roadway? That's stricken, but we put something in that says it cannot be allowed, the water cannot run into the street, the sidewalk. What if something like that were put into this ordinance? Because we're accomplishing, if I heard correctly, we're accomplishing what you want us to accomplish if we put that in the ordinance.
And Washington City has been a leader. I will say that your ordinance is very good. You've been very strong supporters. I greatly appreciate it. However, I can't speak for the board of my agency, right? So they're elected officials for the most part. They're decision makers for that agency. While you're trying to give me scenarios where, what if we did this instead? Only the Washington County Water Conservancy District Board could make a decision about whether they were willing to amend their standards because multiple cities wanted to go in a different direction. All of the cities do, for the most part, have representatives on that board, but they vary, and they're not always city council people. But they do represent, and I guess I'm hopeful that some of that information is being carried back and forth, but there are a huge number of stakeholders, right? One of the things that I think is important here too is the development community actually wants more continuity of standards like this. If it's going to exist in one jurisdiction, they'd rather it exist in the other. And that's because they're making investments in various communities. They may have bought a large parcel of land in one community and not in another, and they're competing against other home builders, other developers. They actually prefer that we be using very similar requirements because it makes it easier for them to understand, comply, and compete. So while that doesn't speak, Councilman Coates, to the actual homeowner that moves into that home, for the most part, people are choosing it's constructed, it's already got the yard in it, the front yard, and they're choosing that home based on what the builder presents to them. So I think, while I understand on principle exactly where you're coming from, I think most people are going to choose their home based on its curb appeal as it's presented by a home builder. And we're talking about homes that will be built in the future and not Mayor Staley's lawn for a home that was built in the past.
I totally understand everything you're saying,
Sure.
But it's just about, we have to, can we go back to the board and request a change? I mean, Mayor Staley, is that something that you're willing to do, is say, our board would really like to amend this one portion? Because I'm not trying to get around them. We're trying to work with them.
Well, and that's what I love about this council is this council is looking for a way to support water conservation while respecting property rights. And I know that we understand the gravity of the situation, and we appreciate the Conservancy District working with our hired staff from 7 different jurisdictions on these. They were presented to the board. The board agreed with them. This particular point of contention on this 10 feet from the roadway, can you give us a little history on where does that guideline? Is that a guideline from the state? Is that a recommendation from the Conservancy District? Where does it come?
That one has its roots at the Conservancy District.
At the Conservancy
Can
District.
I say something real
Yes,
quick?
sure.
So when last year, when we first got the proposed ordinance from the Water District for us to look at, we looked at it, we read it, we agree with the principle of conserving water. We felt that the 14-page document was heavy-handed. And so we worked for months and we came up with a 3-page document that we felt, addressed the issues with conservation, but it wasn't heavy-handed, and it valued property rights like we all value personal property rights. That's kind of where we're at today. We feel like this is just a little bit heavy-handed and maybe a little bit of a step too far for our comfort zone. So maybe the Washington County Water Conservancy District Board could take our opinions and go back and take a look at it. So we're on board with you with the conservation, but in southern Utah, we value property rights deeply. And some of this is kind of stepping on our toes as far as that goes a little bit. We agree with the concept of water conservation, but we don't agree with some of the particulars.
Council, is this the only point that you're not comfortable with?
I just had a few, sorry. I have a few just
I have a couple more too.
questions.
I might be able to take one back to the board, but I mean, if we're
I just have clarifying questions.
Okay.
So
Yeah, just clarifying.
Councilman
right?
Martinson, and I haven't even had a chance to look to this side yet. So
So I had a landscape company for 6 years here in southern Utah. It's 2010, so a lot of the technology wasn't around on the water sense controllers and stuff like that. Maybe what's a price difference between a non-water sense controller and I'm just trying to get a grasp on, let's say, a 4-station or a 6-station non-water sense versus a 6-station water sense.
Just for the audience's benefit, a smart controller is one that monitors the weather. It only waters when it needs to, and you can manage it from your smartphone. I have a 6-station controller, smart controller. It's made by a company right here in Utah, Orbit, and it costs about $100. And right now, the state of Utah is rebating 75 of those $100. So It cost me $25 to implement. In new construction, the builders will obviously go out and bid on these, or their landscapers will. So they'll probably get contractor pricing. You're probably looking, as a contractor, you probably understand, they're going to be very similar to many of the traditional Hunter, Rainbird, and Toro controllers.
Yeah, and with a rebate, you're actually going to be spending less money on a water sense than you will on a regular. So just a point of clarification on that one. And then parks, just in the ordinance, do we need to put something in the park strip saying 8 feet? Because the definition of park strip just says narrow strip. Do we need to clarify that? I know it's clarified later on in the ordinance, but
the 10-foot rule would obviously obviate the park strip rule, right? If you weren't putting turf within 10 feet of the curb or the roadway or the driving surface, then the park strip would usually be included in that. In most cases, it's less than 10 feet. But park strips, in most cities in the region, the idea of putting turf grass in park strips has already been eliminated. There are typically in most landscape ordinances a lot of provisions where we tell people how many trees they must put in, what kind of landscaping, how to install their solar panels, et cetera, et cetera. What we're doing here is trying to take a public resource, the water supply, and ensure that we're able to share it among the largest number of people. And I do want to make the point when we talk about property rights that when we talk about developing land, there's typically an owner of that land that has paid property tax on that land while it was undeveloped for decades and decades and decades. And they eventually decide to develop it and sell it. It's critically important that we have the water to be able to allow them to develop that land as well. And so while some of this stuff may seem, I couldn't tell you, this 10-foot rule accounts for X% of our anticipated water savings, and it's going to stretch our water supplies in the future this much. It's just good practice to keep spray irrigated lawn areas away from places we don't want water to go. And the street is one of those places. And that was the intent of it.
so I guess more of a question for Jordan. Do we need to put 8 foot on the park strip as the definition so that we're potentially in full compliance on that one? Because it just says a typically narrow landscaped area located on the definition section of the.
So Councilman Martinson, you're saying where it says the typical narrow landscape area are located between the back of curb and sidewalk.
Correct.
You're just saying, should you put in parentheses like 8 foot?
Yeah, just because
he doesn't want us to get excluded because of the word narrow, because you said Ivans did.
No, I think in the definition it's irrelevant because the park strip would already, if the park strip was 8 feet or less, it would already be prohibited, right? Because of the 8-foot rule. And if the park strip was within 10 feet, and I understand it probably, whether you need to amend that definition probably depends on the will of this council of how you want to amend this proposed ordinance.
Can I say something really quick?
Hi, Councilwoman Casperson. I feel like I've been.
This
is refreshing to turn this way.
So when Council Henderson brought up how we had, we discussed this, and we got the 14-page ordinance from the district, and then we went through it line by line and ended up actually just throwing that out and doing our own. And so I think what's helpful with this council is to just be more involved in the process rather than just be handed an ordinance and what we need to do. And so if I could make a suggestion that we either deny this for now or table it, and have the time where we can, go through and discuss all of these, and rather than, we're going through, a lot of different lines here. And so I wonder if it'd be beneficial to have the time to be able to have, those important discussions, and even have more discussions with Water Conservancy District as well. And so I feel like that would be, a beneficial use of our time as well.
You make a good point. I know that I've shared with a few of the council members and some staff about my experience. I was a panelist for the Prepare 60 water school. It was held at Bryan Head a couple of weeks ago. I was the only council member on that panel. And I thought it was very refreshing when we were there, because they actually wanted to hear from a council member what my experience was here in our city, or what our experience was that I shared with them. And I think what I tried to tell them that I hope resonated with them is that water isn't something that you have people out holding signs and saying there's no water shortage, it's a conspiracy. You know, we all understand we live in a desert, right? We all understand that we have limited water. We all understand all those important factors. But the whole point is that it puts you in a little bit of a difficult situation as an elected official when you're expected to agree to standards that you didn't have a conversation in creating. And so I know that that's something that you've been hearing that's starting to resonate. And we're not as much speaking to you as we are with our residents too, so they understand where we're at and what we're doing. But when I was there were several questions asked about what we did, and they had heard about the ordinance that we created, and they were saying it was a good ordinance, and other people had asked about it. But I think going forward, I think it'd be really good to have that dialogue. I know that that it goes back to the board and that's their decision. But I left that meeting very optimistic. We had legislators there. We had the director from the Southern Nevada presented, did a great job. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he presented, and all the water managers in Utah were there. And we had a very meaningful conversation. There's only about 20 people there. And it was really, really good to be able to ask those questions and try to consider all the ramifications of the decisions that we're going to make. Again, we're all about conservation. You can see that in how well our city's leading out. But we also have to consider that the fundamental rights that our citizens have to be acknowledged in this process as well. And I think that's kind of where I'm just hung up just a little bit. And I think that oftentimes in government, finding a little bit of a softer position or compromising is often a better way to go. Because if a family, again, I don't want to beat this completely, but if somebody has a house and the way it's laid out, if they're not able to put grass in their front yard and they want grass in their front yard, they should be able to have grass in their front yard. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a big thing because I've had houses with grass in the front yard, but what about people that haven't, that want to build their first home and they vision the grass and mowing the grass in front of their house and not just in the back? And I know a little bit of that sounds sappy, but it's true. We have to consider how all these decisions that we make affects our residents. And, this is the only, speaking for myself, this is the only provision, and I'm refreshed that our council, we work so well together that others saw the same concern that I had in that, and I appreciate it coming forward. And one thing about this council, we always do good work together. We try to find the common ground and move forward, and I'm sure we will on this as we did on our conservation ordinance.
Thank you, council members. Councilman Coates, you said you had a couple more points of clarification, and then I'll bring this discussion to a close.
Yeah, the one question I had, and it was more of just a question, it was on the I have two, but multifamily dwelling section. So it says it allows up to 100 square feet per grass per unit. I don't have an issue with it. The thing that I was concerned about is that in front of their house? Is it typically in the multifamilies we're seeing, they're not in the front, and then they go build an amenity somewhere.
Yes.
And what I don't want to do is limit, like we have a development, I think it's Mustang something that's by my house, townhome, there's not a stitch of grass anywhere, but then they built a pretty good sized family park for it.
Right.
It turned out to be a really good development.
And that's the hope and expectation of allocating it per dwelling unit, is it can all be combined in a common area.
But you tell me, I mean, is it enough for those bigger areas? Because I'd hate to limit that. I don't have any depth perception on that. So that's why I asked the question. I'm sure you've studied it. I'm not opposed to this. I just am trying to understand, because I don't want to limit someone putting a pretty good park for the townhome units, because those kids need an area to play more than anyone because they have zero front yard and zero backyard.
Yeah. What I did was fairly anecdotal. I looked at some of the new complexes being built in the region and looked at the number of units in them and what they had voluntarily put in as grass or what was approved by a planning department. And these guidelines are along with the type of apartment dwellings that you're seeing built now. Okay. And we also understood 100 square feet, a 10 by 10, is not adequate for each individual unit. You probably don't want to put it behind each unit. It would be purely non-functional. It'd be decorative for that purpose. The hope is that they'll put it in a common area, that they'll put the barbecue pit and the basketball courts and all that stuff around that turf area that people go to in the complex and enjoy it. But we also expanded on how much turf grass people could have. Say you build a duplex. Are we going to give those people 200 square feet? We said, no, we give a residential home, regardless of lot size, 600 square feet. So why wouldn't we give the two families living in a duplex at least 600 square feet as well, right?
Yeah.
So on very small developments, they actually got a larger turf allocation.
So, and I like that part. But the question I have is, should we, because it wasn't totally clear to me when I read it that you were adding up the 100 square feet to go put somewhere else. It was just 100 square feet per unit. So I'm just wondering if additional language needs to be added here that says,
like a comma after the grass per unit.
Multifamily dwelling projects are limited to 100 square feet per grass per unit may be combined.
I think that's great.
The amenity area. But I don't want to limit it to just that. It's just it's just maybe something we might want to think about as we're looking at this.
And some of those terminology to make it more clear would not be a conflict with the intent of the standards. So in any case where you're wanting to do something to make it more clear or tailor it, but it still has the same effect, that certainly it doesn't have to be word for word. It needs to be the same guideline and intent, but it might be different verbiage.
Okay. I have one more, Mayor, if that's all right.
All right, this is your last one. So make it count.
It's under the single-family dwelling units, item F. All planting beds must have a mulch upon the soil surface, with exception of areas being restored to appear as native desert. Right. So now you're dictating I can put rock in my planting beds, or are you talking like flower beds?
No, the mulch is a water conserving tool. It keeps weeds down. It keeps water in the soil instead of having it evaporate from the soil. So yes, it would require mulch. I think in every commercial landscape, you're going to see mulching. It makes the landscape more attractive, but it's also a key water conserving feature of landscape.
And I am so against that, because now I'm gonna have mulch in my streets and blown everywhere.
Oh, maybe we misunderstand.
That's why I want to make sure.
Mulch can be rock. It can be artificial turf, could be used as a mulch.
Okay. I'm thinking bark, and I'm
no, it varies. But somebody may choose bark.
Well, that's fine if they choose it, but okay.
Yeah, mulch is merely a covering over the soil. It could be organic, inorganic. In our program, that's how we allow people to have artificial turf, is we consider it a mulch covering between the planted areas.
Then I think we should add that to the definition of what mulch is.
You make a note of both of those.
Can I ask
Councilman
one more
Henderson?
question? Isn't our grass square footage standard more strict in Washington City than it is for the district?
Yes, because you drafted it that way.
Okay, so I just got to tell you just my honest feelings here. Is Washington City, aren't we kind of the leader of getting rid of our turf and turning it in? I mean, haven't we been on the forefront?
Up until this evening, we've been the poster child.
Okay.
I'm not so sure that my video is going to go over very well at the water symposium in November.
So, I mean, this is government for you. So Washington City, that's in the forefront, very supportive of the district and conservation and stuff. And I've been feeling this whole week like you're putting us over a barrel. Like if we don't pass this 10-foot thing, we lose our, turf rebate thing. So take that back to the district. Okay, we're on board with water conservation, but me personally, just speaking for myself, at a certain point, it gets a step too far when we're getting into people's business. And, and that we kind of lose our enthusiasm for it when it gets a step too far like that. So anyway, it just doesn't make sense to me. So
this has been a great conversation, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate. The conversation I think is focused so much on primarily one element that we disagree with. What I want to emphasize right now is how close we are. I think there are so many positive things about this. Doug, we're so fortunate to have you and your expertise. I mean, a career's worth of conservation in the desert. I loved what Councilman Ivy said at water school. I remembered being there a few years back, and we talk about we live in a desert, and then the next line is we need to act like it. We're learning to act like it. I think it sounds like I might not get a unanimous approval on this one tonight. But I won't accept a denial either. So I'm going to take Councilwoman Casperson's recommendation. But before I want to give you the last word, and if you want to have any additional thoughts too, I'd like to continue this conversation. And I want you to know, as a board member there, I've heard what each of you had to say, and I appreciate that feedback. And you're doing a wonderful job.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Doug.
I do want to say that we do not need a decision or to resolve this before December 1st. And so if it's the will of this council that you do want to have more discussion about it and you choose to take no action, or if you take an action that perhaps is the will of the council, or you decide you're going to adopt what the water district has put forth, whatever, we still have plenty of time to have these conversations, decide if the other amendments need to be made. I simply can't speak for the board of the water district, but there is several months available to us to engage back and forth to see if we can find common ground and figure out what solutions we might arrive at.
That was a perfect summary. Jordan, do you have anything to add to that perfect summary? Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
As long as this motion is to continue the discussion and not deny, then can we continue?
I'll make a motion that we tabled item 8A until a future date and work with,
I like that.
with staff and,
absolutely,
and you as being on the board and kind of present our concerns about
and
some of these minor items
absolutely
that are on that we would like to have.
I'll get with Jordan to summarize the discussion here. I'll take it to the board and I'll bring this back to a work session before we bring it back to a regular meeting. Excellent. Do you want to, I think we heard the motion, recorder.
I'll second it.
We have a second by Councilwoman Casperson. This is an ordinance, so we're going to go roll call on this.
And Mayor, can I add one thing just while you're thinking about that?
To your motion?
No, just clarification is that I think we need to define what is roadway. Is it back a walk? Is it TVC? Is it edge of asphalt? We just need to define that. So where that 10 feet starts. And it sounds like it's the travel way, but when I think roadway, it's the edge of the right of way, which is backside of sidewalk. So I just want clarification so that our staff doesn't think one thing and someone else thinks another thing and get it clear. So
Great.
Just one more point.
We're having point of discussion prior to voting for the record. Councilman Ivey, then Councilman Henderson.
Yes, point of clarification is, and I'm sure Mr. Bennett knows what he was, but my question is, do we need to verify that this would actually take us out of compliance by us not agreeing to this one item?
I think we're going to clarify.
We need to clarify that. That's what I'm asking.
And it's challenging because, again, we're entirely reliant for new water and new growth on the water district, and we're in partnership with other municipalities. So while we certainly have a legislative oversight here, it's with a resource that we don't entirely control. So there's a balancing act, and I'm happy to go represent Washington City on that and come back with the best I can. Councilman Henderson, you had some more input, I thought.
I was just gonna say, if they clarified what the roadway is, and if they clarified it more like, we're going to start at the back of the sidewalk, 2 feet would be plenty sufficient from the sidewalk to contain the water.
So, and I think this shows some of that just practical thinking that we started with on this ordinance.
Yeah.
And I may even invite one or two of you to come with me to that board meeting. Thank you so much. We have a motion and a second on the table. Let's go roll call for a unanimous to table. Councilman Ivey.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Henderson. Aye. Coates.
That vote.
You better not, or you're going to be moving down to the end of the.
Just to make sure that when you said unanimous, aye.
Thank you. I got a pretty good council here, but sometimes they beat me up a little. Moving along. Actually, you know what? We're going to take just quick, less than 5-minute break. Let's be back here by 7:43. I know that's a random number. item 10, discussion item ahead of item 9 about our finance update. Brian, I think you're okay with that. I will tell you that both of these items we moved from the work session to the regular meeting. So at this time, we'll move forward with item 10, discussion item. 10A is a discussion regarding the Solus project conditions of approval. What I just want, for the benefit of those in attendance who are likely here for this particular item, this is a discussion item, period. I know it's on the regular meeting, and typically items on the regular meeting are action items. That's not the case tonight. The item is a discussion item, so the process will work like this. I will invite the representative for the Solus project to come forward, and I'll invite that individual to present to the council what they have been discussing with staff and what staff said needed to come before the council. During that time, I'd ask the elected folks here, my council, to take notes on that. After you've presented everything you'd like to, then I'll give council an opportunity to ask questions and comment on that. And once that's over, we will close this agenda item without any action. You may have some directives, some feedback that you're seeking from the council, but we won't take any official action tonight. So that said, I'm going to invite City Planner Eldon Gibb to come forward and set the table. And then after you, Eldon, if council has no questions for you, I'll invite the applicant's representative forward. Eldon.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So we're discussing secondary access at Solus at the Coral Canyon subdivision. A brief timeline of this project. The preliminary plat was approved September 22nd, 2021. The secondary access approval was approved on May 11th, 2022, and we have one final plat that has been recorded at the county, and that was done city council approval on June 8th, 2022. The condition that Coal West has expressed interest in discussing is the secondary access condition that was approved on May 11th, 2022, and that's attached to your report. I am happy to discuss or clarify any questions you may have on that condition.
Council, questions for Eldon?
Eldon, did you say the only question they have is on the roadway and not the rim? Is it just the roadway that they're having a question about?
The rim is tied in with that condition.
So it's regarding both then?
It's part of, yes.
Good clarification. Anything else for City Planner? Thank you. I understand that Matt Liu is the representative. Mr. Liu, if you'd come forward and introduce your item.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Appreciate your time. I appreciate being worked into this agenda as a discussion item. We do, similar to what Eldon just presented, we just wanted some direction and some clarity on a couple of the items. And we also would appreciate just, again, a consideration with either working with city manager and or staff moving forward, so that we can make sure that whatever conditions that we are held to be accountable for, that is, we're all on the same page and we have that complete understanding. Saying that, we are also very sensitive to scars and making sure that all the scars are amended and fit within the natural topography that's there. Again, we would welcome guidance and direction on that specifically. There's a couple items that refer to an upper portion, kind of like what your prior discussion was. We're not sure exactly where that's at. We just want to get some clarity on that. And then the other points of question is timing and what we can look at, maybe considering moving forward. Our next step just in the process, as far as the approval process, is going through, for example, phase 2, just being able to go through the final plat process. not approval, just the process. And up until now, we've kind of held back on going through that process just for this evening to get some clarification on what we can do and if there's a potential consideration of actually moving forward on those on phase 2 and making sure that that can kind of go through its process, because it does take time, but yet not approve it until all the conditions are met according to your desires as well as staff and ordinances that basically dictates what we should and what we could do and what we should be doing. Any questions?
So, Mr. Liu, do you have more to present, or do you want to get into some specifics? I'm guessing it's the latter. Do you want to get into some specifics?
We could, and as you already see in front of you, those specifics are pretty long. You know, there's several items. A lot of the items are pretty much already covered, but there's some probably, I think, 10 items on one and maybe about 10 or 15 on the other.
Councilman Martinson, you want to lead off for us? It looks like you had something.
I can lead off, Mayor, if you want me to.
I know. Go ahead, Councilman.
So, I appreciate you coming and asking for a discussion. It's one of the longest conditions that I've made. We're pretty clear on what we've expected in our hillside. We said it needed to be black basalt. If it wasn't black, it says in there stained or painted. It also says in there that you will cover any scars, including cut, additional cut, or fills. And what we see is left as of right now is that the other condition is you couldn't record your final plat for phase 2. We let you do phase 1 until all those scars were mitigated. And currently right now, there's scars on the east side that aren't mitigated. There's elevated scars with the dirt on the hill going up, and the basalt rock is not all black, like it was recommended by the Hillside Board and this council. So I'm confused on why we're here today, because all we're asking you to do is what was agreed to. And one other thing is we're also already past, our legal counsel told us, he can't be here tonight, that we're past the time of, appealing the conditions. So I'm just surprised we're here today, because it's very clear to me. I understand things change, but this is how we're protecting our hillsides, is by this. And if we want to develop on this hillside, we have to protect them. And we already made other conditions for other developers, and they're identical.
Okay.
So I don't feel comfortable releasing any condition, because this is the new standard for Washington. If you want to develop on our hillsides, and I think we should. I think we should develop these hillsides. They're beautiful places for people to live, but we have to protect them, because none of us want to be known for the Dixie Scar.
For sure. And being there and spending part of my career there,
Yes.
I totally understand. Again, we're definitely not debating that at all. We feel the same way. The question would be the mechanism, the actual, what does that mean? I mean, to do the amendment on the scars, there's several options. So we're just trying to see what options, I guess we can look. I mean, there's the stains, which is an option, totally. There is, seeding, there's hydro seeding, there's a lot of different things there. There's landscape that talked about irrigation. So we're just trying to.
So what would you like to do? Because I agree with you, there's options, right? My understanding is that, because we had in here irrigated landscaping, because at one point there was fill on the edge, but then the plan changed and you built rock walls instead of the landscaping, which I don't think we had a problem with, because it worked within our hillside. But then that falls into that whole rim has to be mitigated as the same condition. If it's a basalt rock, it has to be black basalt. It says it right there, black basalt. So I just want to make sure you're doing what you said you agreed to when we approved it, because I'm pretty sure this development wouldn't have got approved with the current design that was there if these conditions weren't met. So I just want to you keep saying we're unclear, but what are you unclear? Because I'm clear.
I'm with you, but what is a natural landscape? What does it blends into naturally? I mean, is the entire black rock, if we were to tint the whole thing, you'll have an entire black wall up against the hillside. Is that naturally what's a part of that hillside currently? I just wonder if there's other options besides doing a mix of the black wall and maybe some irrigation, maybe some hydro seeding. I'm just trying to see if there's other options there.
What's your plan? I'm not going to design your project. What's your plan? So that's my question is, what do you want to do? Because right now, that whole west side's done, but it's not quite to the standards. You got basalt rock you got to handle with the whiteness in it. And going down the hillside with the scar, I drove by today, it's paved, which is great. I'm glad that's one of the conditions, we're working through it, but there's still red scars that were supposed to be mitigated with landscape rock. We didn't say we said you had to irrigate on the rim, but we never said you had to irrigate down the edge, but you got to mitigate the redness that's there. So I don't know why we had to come to council to ask that question, because I think we've answered that.
So Councilman Coast, Mr. Liu, you asked a question about, having just a black wall. If you go back and listen to the recording of our council meeting, what we had talked about is we were trying to find a ratio of how much should be the black rock and then what should be irrigated landscape, because we realized that we wanted it to look natural.
Correct.
And the geology there speaks that the cap rock is all basalt. It's a hard rock. The face of the rock is all basalt. It's black rock. And we understand, we talked about in our meeting, that once a rock is broken, once a basalt is broken, the desert varnish is the shiny black, and then there might be some variations of color within the rock. And I think that even the council is okay with even those variations, those natural variations. But using a rock that was not a basalt, I think that goes against what the intent of the council was. And as far as what I would say is that, to me, I've got to agree. I think it was very clear originally what our intent was. I'm actually on the hillside board. I'm a geologist. I understand it. I've been up there. I was there when they talked about it. I heard the motion on site. And it was very clear, because we saw this as a vista, that we were not going to compromise for anything. And I know that sounds really arrogant, where I don't own it, but we all own the vista. And so, to make it very succinct, I think the intent was very clear in what we wanted as a council. And the point is, every scar needs to be mitigated, whether it's a fill scar or whether it's a road created scar. And however that, whatever that meaning is, it's very clear back in the original motion. So for me, Mr. Liu, I don't think that there's a whole lot of stuff here that is not clear. It's just what I would like to know personally is, what does your client want? Just basic, because I think it's clear, but why are we here tonight? What do you want? I would love to hear that.
He's right behind me.
Eric, come forward and just state your full name for the record.
Thank you. Eric Day with Coal West. I can hopefully help out a little bit. We're looking for some very specific things. Number one, I want to make sure a clarification.
And then just get into that mic a little more. Thank you.
I want to make sure on a clarification that we can submit for final plat for phase 2 before all of the COAs are met, that it just will not be recorded per the COA that is written. It says it cannot be recorded. So I want to make sure that we can submit, have you guys review it, phase 2, and that it can go through the signatures, and maybe it goes through up to the mayor and he just won't sign until staff or whoever is designated will determine that the conditions are met.
Are you reading your motion? I'm rereading. It's maybe the third or fourth line from the bottom. Third line from the bottom.
These scar mitigations must be installed to all disturbed or exposed area around the entire rim of the project prior to final plat approval of phase 2.
So it sounds
approval.
Like
so that means from the council.
Yeah.
So but my understanding, it's already been through staff approval, because it was on our agenda and we pulled it off because it was already done. So that's already to that point.
For phase 2, has it come forward to us for a final plat?
No, it has not.
So I'm reading this, and you made the motion, Councilman, so I don't want to. I don't remember, but I read this that you could apply for it, you just won't have approval until the conditions are met. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, you couldn't get approval from council until.
I don't think that the staff feels like, and I don't think the applicant feels like they've met all those conditions yet. So no, it hasn't received staff approval yet.
Yeah, so
But
so
the
it can't even
approval,
get-
but the approval, I think that they're asking for clarification is when the council approves the final plat. That's the way I would read
Phase
that
2?
on phase 2. So you could do everything
What
up
extent
to that
of
point, and then
mitigation?
and then the council will look at it and say, yeah, it looks like we agree, everything has been mitigated. Does that make sense? Am I on the right page, Councilman Coates?
But the wording in the motion was the
Go ahead and read it aloud, Councilman.
mitigations must be installed to all disturbed or exposed areas around the entire rim of the ridge prior to final plat approval. So what is, I don't
Phase
understand.
2.
Phase 2, yes.
And our final plat approval happens with the city council at this meeting.
Yeah, so
So-
there's no reason why you can't work through staff, but why would staff approve it until the conditions are done?
You can get all your recommendations and the staff will make a recommendation, but the final approval then would be the council.
I think we're talking about two separate things and the conditions are tied to different things, right? So maybe I can clarify a little bit and maybe we agree, maybe we don't, but I think that's where the discussion needs to go. There's COAs that are tied specifically to the roadway. We cannot get a certificate of occupancy for any units within the entire project until those conditions on the roadway are met. We're all in agreement there. The second one is there's some COAs that are tied to the rim, the entirety of the rim going around the ridge, that according to this cannot be, or those are tied to us being able to get approval for phase 2 final plat.
Correct.
So there's two different
So if you-
triggers.
and the reason why that triggered it is because anything we mass graded or graded along the rim, because when we were in our meeting, you said, we're gonna mass grade the whole thing. So we said, fine, that's a condition as long as you get all the scar mitigation. Now you've done part of phase 2 and you've mostly mitigated that, but the east side, which I don't know if it's phase 3 or 4, hasn't been mitigated. There's still scars on that east
That's
side.
where we disagree, I guess. And that's one of the reasons we're here. We believe that
Did
we
phase
have
2.
mitigated per COA on all phases.
You have not mitigated on the east side. You scarred it. You scarred that ridge line.
Correct.
And that's in phase 2.
How did you mitigate it? And
We
this
put down
condition,
landscape rock around it is how we mitigated for it.
I see it all the time. You're talking about right below it. Everything above it is still a scar.
Correct. I think this is an interpretation of what around the rim is defined as. We're defining it as the lower part of the rim that was scarred. What you're seeing from down below is actually a cut-in trail, and then where the wall's going to go. So you're seeing a vertical
It says cut
dirt
or
wall
fill. It's a cut or fill scar,
around the rim.
which is what you did.
Again, I'm not trying to
Okay,
argue with you. I'm saying I think it's a definition difference.
It's a scar on the rim. So this is how I'm reading it. It's a scar. You haven't mitigated it. When that's mitigated, we'll record phase 2.
I understand your point. I'm saying I have a different perspective. My perspective is that we have mitigated that scar around the rim. So to us, where we're at is we believe we've mitigated as such. Therefore, we should be allowed to proceed with our phase 2 final plat.
I respectfully disagree 100%. I so disagree with you. And then you also added a massive pile that is a scar that we all have to look at. And you have and that wasn't a part of this because you said you were going to mass grade the whole thing and then you stopped. So that's a scar that has to be taken care of too.
And we can have a discussion around that as well. But again, I'm not here to argue. I know that you and we've discussed this before. We see it differently.
I'm not here to argue with you either, Eric.
Right.
We had this discussion. It's clear. I just don't understand what you're trying to get us to let you record phase 2 without mitigating the scars.
No.
That's what you said.
No. We believe that we've mitigated the scars around the rim, which is what the COA states.
And we still do have some scarring to mitigate. And that's why I think we would like
On the
some
roadway.
connection on the roadway. Again, that's why it's two separate things, sorry. That's why we'd like to be able to work with staff to figure out what that solution is.
I mean, let's just think about this logically a little bit. If what Councilman Coates stating is our logical perspective here, then the entirety of the mesa is a scar, which would require us then to come and put irrigated landscaping or black basalt rock on the entirety of the mesa.
You know, Mayor, let me inject right there. Sorry. So I was at my grandson's flag football game, And I took a picture on the east side of the mesa, and I'm looking at it right here. This is just ridiculous. Sorry, it's a scar. It's not black. There's red rocks disturbed. There's a hill. It hasn't been mitigated at all. Are you saying that the east side of the rim has been mitigated?
I'm saying that around the rim, if you go up and take a look at it, actually go up and walk it or drive, there's a pathway alongside of it that we cut in for the future trail.
So you're saying if you stand on the rim.
You will see landscape rock in a very clear defined line as you look down.
That wasn't the intent. That's not even close to the intent of what the hillside or the council has. We are trying to protect the vista. Looking up. If you're on top of it, of course, if you had it, you can't see the scar from the top. We're not worried about that. We're worried about from I-15 and our neighbors in Coral Canyon, our neighbor and our people in Washington.
And that work will be completed as part of a future phase. What you're asking a developer to do, I just want to make sure you understand what you're asking, is that we go forward and we put in a pathway, we build a wall, and do the entirety of that entire rim before we can even apply for a phase 2 final plat. You're asking us to spend probably, with all the grading, $4 million.
Let me just.
I'm asking you to do what you agreed to do.
Let me suggest this, Councilman.
I'm just asking you to do what you agreed to do.
Let me suggest this. Do exactly what the motion says to mitigate the rim before final plat approval of phase 2. That's what we're asking. That's what the motion said. That's what I understand.
This is exactly what we were afraid was going to happen, is why we made our motion the way we made it. Because a partial work got done, and now it's left there. And we have no idea when you're going to be doing the next. We have no idea. Economy's slowing down. Maybe you're not.
It's definitely not for us.
Well, that's good. Then get the rim done and do that next phase, and there's no problem.
So a developer can't go out and get financing for $4 million on lots that aren't lots. He can't go and get financing for lots that aren't through final plat.
I understand what you're saying, Eric.
He can't get financing for lots that he can't control because he can't take from SITLA until he gets final plat. That's development, right?
Then you shouldn't have scarred it. Why did you scar it? That's the question. You could have not scarred it, and we probably would have been here going, okay, you haven't scarred it yet, we understand. But you said you were going to scar it all by building the lots, and then you went and did it. And so we just want you to do the areas you touched. That's all we're saying.
Let me try and be solution oriented if I could, and maybe this will help. If the concern is, and I've heard this before and I understand the concern, is that Coal West is going to go bankrupt and we're not going to build out the following phases. Let us bond for that improvement.
Just go build it. What does bonding do?
Because I can bond for the wall portion and I can bond for the the trail portion, and then I can move on and get phase 2 final plat and move on for the following ones. If I go on and build it now, I can't get financing for that amount of improvement without having lots to bond off of, to finance off. I can't move forward. You're literally, if anything's going to stop this development, it's this.
We're not stopping you. You scarred it, not us. Okay. And we're going to disagree. And that's fine. And that's fine. But
I think when the COA was made, we understood, obviously we understood because we paid a landscaper to go up and put down black landscape rock on that east side. So we understood the COA as written, which is to mitigate the scar along the rim. That's what we felt that we did. We then cut in the trailway so we could show that clear delineation about where that trail is going to be going and what then on the outside of that would have to be mitigated with the black landscape rock.
So Eric, I know there's a point of difference on around the rim and mitigation around the rim. I think if I'm hearing you right, I'm hearing you say that in your definition of the rim, you've mitigated that specific portion, but you understand that there's a trail and walls, and in your opinion, when those are done, does that then bring back the aesthetics so we don't have the view like that? Is that, I'm trying to.
The east side will look exactly like the other side. It's the exact same condition. So you'll
But
see
because we haven't got to phases 3, 4, 5, and 6, you don't have the ability to have the collateral to fund.
I don't know the property. It's Sitla property. Until I get to final plat, I can't take it down from Sitla.
Right, I understand how they.
So why did
how they-
Sitla let you scar their property?
Frank, you've done Sitla contracts before. You know how they work.
I know how it works.
And
I know exactly how it
Let me just
works.
hold you really quick. And I know that these can get heated, it's councilman in this setting, and I know in other settings it's not, but.
I'm sorry, yes.
I hear what you're saying, and you're in a bit of a predicament, and
The stuff on the roadway, we're here for the secondary access. We just wanted to reach an agreement with we'll go stay in the rock. If you guys want us to stay in the rock black, we'll go do it. We don't think it's the best decision. We understand.
can we maybe pivot over to the roadway for just a minute?
Yes.
Let's have that discussion, and we're going to put
I think that's a
the
simpler
other one on hold for just a minute.
Sure.
Let it simmer or cool
Yes.
down. Not let it simmer. Let it cool.
And I'm sorry if it's. I
no,
hope this isn't. We're just trying to find a good
you're
solution.
great. This is a big undertaking. You got a lot of pressure on you. We get it. Talk to us about the road, and just break it down. We're speaking. My council speaking really direct. Speak really directly to us.
Perfect.
And tell us where you are and what you're struggling with. Help us really clearly understand.
So a few questions for clarification. One, and I think I know the answer. I'm just going to ask it again. It's in our position that we should not paint black basalt rock to be black. If the council wants us to do that, we will do so.
I don't have the answer to that.
What I think would be easy with this is if it's basalt rock,
It's technically black basalt.
if it's basalt,
No, hold on. There's a difference. It's all basalt. All of that's basalt, but it's the white face
But
that's
it's
the
the
problem.
white
We need to stain the white ones. I've told you this, Eric. It's the white ones. It's supposed to be black so it blends in, and it's not. And that hillside had the same thing. If we don't stain the black ones, I'm not asking you to stain the ones that are black. I'm asking you to stain the white ones so they look black. Now, would I stain them all? I probably would to make it match. And after a year, that stuff fades a little bit, and it looks good. I like it, but that's my opinion. And I think it helps protect the hillsides.
I guess what I was referring to, Councilman, is that if it's a black basalt rock, there's no reason to stain it. But if it's of a different color and it doesn't blend in, again, in the conditions, there's basalt rock is mentioned in 3 or 4 different places, in 3 or 4 different of the conditions. So,
But in the condition, that's why I specifically stated black basalt rock, because some of the basalt is white on faces and other things. And it even says it in the hillside stuff that it needs to be painted or stained to match the hillside. That's my standing on it. But do you have another solution? I mean, I don't know how else you're going to mitigate the whiteness that's popping out. And it's very easy to see. And that goes for the road and all the walls along the lots too, because that's part of the rim side. That's my understanding after rereading this.
Let me ask a clarifying question, just so I understand a little bit better, because I think it's important. And we went through some of this a couple of weeks ago with another applicant. I think really what we're trying to do is we're trying to mitigate that line, whether it's on the roadway or whether it's up on the top. And that can be done with a mix of things just to make it look like it blends, because I think, and just for my own personal feeling, if it's all black and it wasn't all black, it can create a line that doesn't look natural as well. So am I correct in understanding that we're looking for some variation? We're looking for some, I mean, we don't want it to be a solid black line up there either that makes it, but it can't be solid white on that road scar, because I've been out on site with them on some of the walls that we have approved, and that as staff, we said that looks pretty good. And it's not completely painted black, but it makes it look like it's not a scar that stands out if you're away from the hillside.
And the tricky part of that too is some of the existing walls that have been there for, earlier developments are all kind of the same rock.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where we've kind of gone through, okay, we want to blend into the natural landscape. We're kind of following what was currently there. And if it's error, we'll fix it. But we're just trying to stay consistent with what's there.
Well, I think I'm trying to understand. It's one of those, when I look at it, I can tell that it's been mitigated or it hasn't, right? It's really hard to sit and say, we need to absolutely paint it solid black all the way up. But if there are boulders and things that are too white and they go in and they mitigate that to the point that, I mean, you're always going to see that it's different because there's been a cut, but to the extent possible, we want it to blend. Am I understanding that correctly, or help me understand differently?
No, my experience has told me that you can make it work with what I've suggested.
Okay.
So I'm not saying no. I just, you know, you didn't have to push the hillside so hard either. You could have pulled it back some. The first phase is pulled back a little bit more and not so, I mean, you pushed the limits. And so with pushing those limits, some of those things stick out more, which I'm fine with as long as we do it right.
But there is some interpretation as to what mitigation looks like. As long as it doesn't look like there's a solid line or there's a solid piece of red, or there's different ways that it can be mitigated. And staff, I guess I'm talking from a staff
But who makes
perspective.
that decision?
Exactly.
Because we're saying right here it needs to be the black. So if you took the white and, I mean, and stained those white ones darker, and then all of a sudden it just blends and there's some varying colors between them, then
if you took the whitest ones and you did 50 or 60 or 75% until it looked like you stand back and it looks like they mitigated the scar. I think that's the hard part, is there is a little bit of art to this as well. And I'm just thinking from a staff perspective on how
the
Mm-hmm.
basalt
decide to stop.
cap below the trail on the ridge is almost solid black. And so when I was up there looking at it today, I drove my Jeep up there, drove around, got out and walked. I mean, to me, just, you know, I'm not a professional landscape architect or anything, but to me, it would look much better stained black. All of that rock work would. It would match better with the natural existing basalt, which is almost solid black down below the trail. So to me, you know, it would look better stained black. And then I did see a few cut slopes that need some work. You know, they're even eroding. So maybe some, I don't know, riprap or something.
So I still think that the original conditions in the staff report and the city council motion conditions for approval addresses everything that we're talking about. It talks about riprap. It talks about stating so the lighter rocks are darker. It's a good motion. It was good conditions. Let me just ask one clarifying question. The picture that Drew put up there, that's in phase 2, correct? That picture right there?
No, that would be somewhere on the other side of the road. So 3, 4, 5, or 6.
On the east side.
Saying that red stuff right there is on the west side of the cut you made for the trail. Well, it's on the east side of the bluff, but the red stuff that we can see is, so you've cut a trail in front of that red stuff and you landscaped it on the east side of the cut trail?
As the hill goes up, it kind of curves off at the end, right? So we cut a trail in here where the future trail is going to go. Any scarring that was on this side of the trail, we put down black basalt landscape rock.
Okay.
Then the trail will go in once, as we build out 3, 4, 5, and 6, we'll put the trail in and put a wall in. So it'll look exactly the same as the other side of the block.
So what we're seeing there, that red will be behind the basalt wall.
You will see zero red.
Right, okay.
You will see you will not see any red. It'll be exactly the same as the other side of the block.
While we're on this conversation, Drew, can you pull up the plat map again just to look at the phasing? There was one that showed each of the phases, that, yeah, one of those with the blue on there. So there's 1, and then 2 is long along that west side. And then you see that secondary access, and then you come back on the east side with 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2's a pretty large phase.
Mm-hmm. Each phase is about 40 units, give or take.
Okay. And what we're seeing is that for the most part, other than some sections along the road, the secondary access road, that rim or perimeter is pretty well done on that west side.
Besides the staining of the rocks.
Aside from the staining of
and the additional landscape rock that might be required on any of the scars outside of the roadway. I don't know where they're at with that.
I just want to be clear on that and correct me, because I think we're going to
Yeah,
discuss this one too. According to the conditions that I'm reading, it says we only have to paint or stain rocks on the secondary access. It does not say that along the rim.
Councilman Ivy, what's your opinion on that?
The boulder retainers near the top of the ridge shall be treated and stained to better match the dark colors.
Correct, and that's under the secondary access provisions?
Boulder retainers near the top of the ridge.
I believe that was from the 5/11/22 council meeting, which was specifically about the secondary access.
It's not what it says, but
And then just clarification on top of the ridge line. There's a lot of tops as part of the whole development. It's at the very top.
You guys are killing me.
No, I'm just asking.
No, this is ridiculous. I'm so done with this. It is so clear. It's the ridge line. You guys know
the entire thing.
You know what the ridge line is. Don't tell me you don't know what the ridge line is. Oh, the ridge line's this, the ridge line's that. The ridge line is what it is. It's that top ridge. You've elevated yourself another ridge on top of that. That's what it is. I don't know what else to say, because I understand where you're at, but we were clear, we discussed it, we agreed upon it, we moved forward. A year or so later, now that the conditions, you don't want to do the conditions, or don't agree with the conditions, or you misunderstood, I don't know, but I thought we were pretty clear. And now you're asking me where the ridge line is? Really? Like, I just don't, it's the edge of all these lots is the ridge line, wherever you touch.
Well, with the road. Okay, so you got the road, and then you got ridges on the opposite side of the road, then you got ridges on the bottom side of the road. I'm just top of the ridge. I'm just looking for a clarification.
So,
and that's where I'm confused. And I apologize, Councilman.
No,
that's where I'm confused.
I'm done.
Let me go back to the east side where you've got the exposed red stuff. So what you're saying is you've got to grade those lots out up there before you can even build a wall, so you can have your grade, right?
Yeah, so we just received approved CDs on all future phases about 2 weeks ago. We're getting our site development contractor under contract right now. He should start turning dirt on phases 3, 4, the pathway and the wall throughout the entire section, because we're also doing the water and sewer, so we can loop that in. So we have to do the entire section with phases 3 and 4. They're going to start that work probably within about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, so I mean, I can totally understand that, because you typically don't build a rock wall before you got your grade for your lots, right? Is that what you're saying?
There's a couple things on that. It's not even our property yet. I have to get through final
Right.
plat before I can take it down, but just from a strict construction perspective, yes.
So this is kind of my perspective here. I can understand that on the east side, but I'm almost kind of feeling, you know, that you're wanting us to make some adjustments on that, which I can understand. But I also feel at the same time you're trying to maybe do less on the west side than what we had discussed in our meeting. So, and just barely you said, you know, I was kind of picturing you might paint the rocks on the road coming down, but not the ones up on top. And to me, that would be a little silly. So, I mean, for me personally, I think we need to make sure that at least on the west side that your mitigation is rock solid as far as what we want before we would even consider, you know, talking with you about something else on the east side. So I mean, are you willing to, you know, continue the mitigation and make it rock solid, so to speak?
Yeah, again,
so that we can feel good about it.
Yeah, appreciate the guidance, appreciate the council. I think the question would be just who do we work with directly to make sure that we're perfect in our presentation or our mitigation? Is that can we work with? city
Jeremy,
manager,
do you have a
staff? How do we want to do this?
recommendation, city manager? I
Who wants
see
to put
Michelle
themselves in
back
front of
there,
that?
but I don't think that's her job, but
I think
but she
we-
would be the kindest person you've ever worked with. She's fantastic.
I think we have multiple staff members who understand your intent and what you want. So if you want to pick somebody,
Allow the
I'm-
process.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to have Eldon or Drew do it. Somebody from Public Works. I think everybody understands what you're looking for now after the clarification.
I think we should, that's fine if they want to work with staff, but
What we're going to end up with is at some point, we're going to end up with a staff recommendation as to move forward. And then it's still going to be up to the council to have that final say. So I think whoever we choose as a staff member to work with them at some point says, yes, I feel like this meets the intent that the council was looking for, but then the council's still going to have to look at it and say, yes, that does, or no, it doesn't. So we'll do the best we can, certainly.
Start grading the lots on the other side.
The plan is, it's kind of contingent upon, this stuff all kind of works together, you know? So we have to get done phase 2 before we can get through to phase 3. Our hope was that we could apply for phase 2 at your next council meeting. We would get that review done. While that review is going through and the signatures and everything was being done, we would do all the improvements on the west side. Then once those improvements are done, the final signature would go on the plat, we'd go record. While that's going on, we would then start earthwork movement within the next 2 to 3 weeks on the east side. That's probably because of the offsites, a 6 to 7 month construction project to do the phases 3, 4, and the offsites. So all that entire wall, everything would be in, if everything goes right, within the next 6 to 7 months. To be honest,
So you're wanting to record on phase 2 before?
correct.
So you haven't turned anything into staff yet?
Correct.
So you're looking for 2 weeks from now to get an approval on your final plat from city council?
With the understanding that we would not be able to record until the improvements are completed.
we already have that understanding. It's in writing. It's right here. Just go do it. And then you don't even have to talk to us. You just go through the process. That's what I just don't understand is go do it. You say you're going to start in 2 weeks, but then you say you can't get funding for it. Like, I'm just surprised because this is exactly what we don't want to do. And if we say we go down this road and change it, all of a sudden the condition we just made 2 weeks ago, we made the same condition. If they touched phase 2 at all, they could not record phase 1 until the scar mitigation is done. The exact same condition. So now we've just undone that group's thing. So I'm just setting the standard as this is it. When you're done, come put in your final plat and we'll approve it when the conditions are done. We're just asking you to do what you said you would do.
Council, any final thoughts, comments for the applicants?
Just maybe reiterate my position, just so the council knows, is that, to me, as I said, I don't want to be redundant, but I think it's important. The original conditions in the staff report and the motion that we approved in council meeting is clear. The intent is clear. The direction is clear. I say, go and do what it says, and that's my opinion.
One clarifying question, because I want to make sure that what I'm hearing is what I'm hearing. Are you saying that in order for us to get an approval on a final plat for phase 2, I'm going to have to put in all the grading, the wall, and the trail on the other side of the mesa?
Anything you scarred, yes.
Anything you scarred.
Anything you scarred. If you don't grade anymore up that edge, the plateau looks great as it is today. But you scarred that east edge. If you wouldn't have scarred it and left that fill area, then we wouldn't be here today. And I'd be like, okay, they didn't scar anything. But it was because of the mass grading that you said you were going to do originally, which is why we made that condition.
Is that everybody's opinion?
I'm in agreement with
No,
that.
hey, no. I love your residents, but I can't. This is not a ball game.
That is my position.
Although
as well.
Councilwoman Casperson was a collegiate athlete. And let's listen to what you have to say, Councilman.
I don't want to be redundant. I just want to say that is my position as well.
The reason I'm asking is because that will significantly delay that side of the project.
Delay the.
That side of the project will not move forward for a longer period of time. You will see that the people that just were clapping will see that scar for a much longer period of time. I don't know how I'm gonna get financing for it is the reason I said it.
But it also, we don't record phase two, it affects you as well.
It does, for sure.
So it affects all of us, and I hate that we're in this position, but that's where we're at.
That's why I'm just asking, I wanna make sure we're all on the same page for what we're looking at.
Councilman Martinson. Councilman Henderson, anything else? This is a tough situation. Thank you for bringing this to the council tonight. I'm not sure where we got, but let's let this digest a little bit, and certainly the project started up there, and we wanted to see it finish and be beautiful for everyone in our community. So this is a tough situation. Thank you both. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Matt?
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate both. Okay. And you're welcome to leave unless you'd like to hear an update on the budget. If you haven't heard Brian Brown, you're really missing out. Raise your hand, Brian. I mean, he's our finance guy. You have a great night, everyone. Drive safely. We appreciate you being here and caring about the community. Going back to item 9, finance. 9A is the finance quarterly update. I look forward to this every 3 months, Brian. I mean, I mark this on my calendar, and come tell us how we're doing, Finance Director Brian Brown.
I know I know they said no more jokes tonight, but the city manager told me I should tell one.
Hold on a second. We're starting with a joke. We're due for a good one, okay, Brian?
So I'll start off with, did you hear about the funny accountant? Me neither.
Okay. It's better than the police chief's joke.
So this is what we're reviewing here tonight is fourth quarter. It's basically fiscal year 23 for last year. We're busy working on the audit, preparing for the audit. The trial balance is due to the auditors in a week, so we're super busy with that. So just to start off, this is a summary of all the funds, revenues, and expense for the whole year, actually for the last 3 years. As you can see, when I looked at this, all the revenue for all the funds increased except for stormwater. We'll talk about general fund. I know it shows it didn't increase there, but we'll talk about it because we have to talk about accrued revenue on the next slide. And also, as you can see, the big picture on all the funds, we did see some increases on expenses this year. So we'll kind of, I have some breakdowns that go into more detail on that. So we'll start off with the general fund. Here you can see the revenue expense for the last 3 years. And as I just mentioned accrued revenue. So accrued revenue, basically the easiest definition I give is we record it when it's earned, not when we receive it. So taxes is where most of that accrued revenue is going to come in. So we have 2.3 million that we're going to accrue back. So once we do that, we'll have 6.9 million in taxes, and that total will jump up to 32 million. So that's roughly a 7% increase in general fund revenue. And then the expenses on the general fund, you could see on that first graph, the bar chart, there was some increases. And the main increases in general fund were due to new hires, wage increases, and then there was a transfer to the capital projects general fund. So that covers the general fund.
So Brian, can you explain to me, why taxes says in 2021 are more than in 2023.
So taxes, it goes back to accrued revenue. Like I said, we record it when it's earned, not when it's received. So a good example is a city sells items, they collect the property tax. That's when the city actually earns it. Then they have till July 1st to pay their property tax to the state, their sales tax, sorry, to the state. And then the state we actually receive the sales tax from June in August.
I know, but why are we making, because every year you say sales tax went up, but in 2021 it shows we had 16,444,000.
So if we pull that accrued back in, that there should be a big asterisk by that. It says included accrued revenue, and that number really should be 16.9 million.
So top line on taxes for 2023, once you record the accrual, will show what number?
So
16.9. Okay, so we're trending the right way.
Yeah, so really the total number for the revenue for all general fund is 32 million for the whole year when you make that adjustment.
So am I the only one that's not seeing this? The top line says 2021 from the left to the right to 2023. It shows total revenue 30 million on the left, to the right is 29. How are we more in 21 than we are in 23 when every year we get increased taxes?
Hasn't recorded yet. Hasn't been.
21 was because of our funds from the federal government, the ARPA money. So 21 was a little bit more than 22, but our taxes actually went up in 22. But then 23, once he's done with his accruals, once he's done doing his accounting magic, it'll say 16.8 instead of 14.6. So next year we'll put that in there. And we'll just put an
asterisk. And when you say taxes went up, tax rates didn't increase.
No,
just
we're talking
taxes collected.
Sales tax collected
increased.
It's made that.
I understand what you're saying.
ARPA's the outlier for 21, and for 23 we haven't recorded the rest of our sales tax.
I'll just stick to land development.
And the other thing is you have to realize back in if you were to actually take the sales tax or the taxes collected back in 21, we actually included B and C in that revenue, and then we transferred it out to the capital projects fund. So if you were to pull those out, it would be a whole different number. So there's an accounting change there in how we handle the B and C funds, because we were just recording this revenue and the transfer them out. But as a whole, the general fund, like I said, it'll be 32 million as a whole, so it's about 7% increase once we do all those accruals.
Great.
Brian, when do you generally put those accruals back in?
We're working on it right now.
Okay.
For the audit. We have to do it for the audit.
Presentation, we would see that.
We have to do it for the audit.
Perfect.
That's what we're doing. So now we'll move on to, in the past, we've given a brief overview of the permits. So here's how the permits I know we put a lot of years up there, but the reason why we include I like to go back to 2006 because it shows us 2008, 2009, and that's when the Great Recession was, or what they call the Great Recession. So we can kind of see the trend from that point to where we're at now. And the residence permits were down 10%, but we still had our fourth highest year. And these do play into the impact fees, the building permits. When you look at this, we did see some decreases to impact fees. I looked at stormwater, and you do see a big decrease there, but when the stormwater impact fees recorded is on final plat. So, and we looked at it, and the final plats were actually down in 23. And the streets and public safety, the reason why that's a little more is due to commercial, how they calculate that for commercial properties. So our impact fees are pretty comparable to prior years, even with them being down about 10%. And when I throw in this wrap tax summary, you can see by year the total collections, the total distributions, and then that committed amount for the culture, the facilities and arts. So this one, we see quite an increase. Earned interest this year. In fiscal year 23, we earned 2.5 million, where last year we earned 700,000. But most of this, it's not the general fund. Most of it, as you can see, is in the capital projects. They're the ones we have to separate that. We have to keep track of who earns the interest. And now we get to the enterprise funds, so you can see those over the last 3 years. Like I said, all these increased. The only one that went down was that stormwater, and it's due to that plat. And the expenses also increased, mainly due to projects. Water and sewer had capital projects. The power, I talked to Rick about this. He said the estimated increase in power costs was about $6 million this last year. So that's the increase there. And
Can I ask
then-
you a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. The interest earnings, is any of those restricted, or can those just go into the general fund and can be used then for anything?
Back here. So they're restricted to the funds. We have to track how much cash each fund has, or how much each fund has invested in that.
And then it goes to the different.
And then it goes back to that fund.
Okay.
So you can see like this one, capital projects, storm drain, electric, sewer, water, and general fund.
So for instance, if it was impact fees that we had in there that made the interest, then that interest has to stay with impact fees. But some of it would be unrestricted, but the majority would not be.
So this is a summary of all the enterprise funds. And that's pretty much all I have. Do you have any questions regarding this quarter or anything as we prepare?
What's our fund balance at right now?
Oh, I was going to check that and I forgot to calculate that.
I got them.
So I will have to calculate that and email it to you.
I'm just curious percentage wise where we're at with it. So just an email is great if you can send that to the council.
I came to work today. I got to do that. I totally started working on other stuff. So I will have to email that to you.
How much sales tax are we getting from the quesadilla truck? Just curious, just wondering.
We get.
So the correct answer is we can't talk about individual sales tax producers.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I have no clue.
I'm helping him get off the hook here.
We know a lot of that sales tax revenue is coming from middle section over here.
Brian, do you see any trends?
Yeah. I love
Do you
that
see any
place.
trends, Brian, in the finances that we need to be aware of? Any trends or?
That's what I was going to talk about is sales tax. When you go back and look at it over the last 5 years, we've really trended at 10%. And even last year we were about 7.5%, and this year was the first few payments we received were about that 7%. So we're still trending about that 7%.
Sales tax is trending up at kind of the same rate.
Mm-hmm. And then property tax, when I looked at it, it stays. It's net is margin neutral, meaning so we collect the same amount of tax. They adjust that mill levy. But the new growth is pretty much.
All right. Yeah, I'm taking your bait on this, Brian, because what happens, and I've said this before, and it puts cities in a tough spot, as we face this inflation, the value of houses go up, the cost of city services go up, the property tax effective rate goes down, we collect the same. So we're getting further and further behind on property taxes, and inflation is just a losing battle because our revenue stays even while our expenses increase. It's just not designed for our revenue to increase. So sales taxes are saving grace, and it's the only card we have to play right now. And I mean, but at the same time, there's a reason why we have, if not the lowest, among the lowest property tax in the state, and it's because we're a conservative area, but it does make it really tough to meet the needs of a growing community.
The property tax, it does increase by the new growth,
but we're also required to provide the services there, and it's
so it's slow and gradually.
As fast as we run, we lose ground. So,
but as far as everything goes, this year, when we looked at the beginning of this year, I'm like, I don't know where we're going to end up at, but it turned out to be a pretty good year for Washington City, and everything trended in expense
And-
wise revenues.
And I think an area where we may have some success with property taxes on some commercial projects coming forward at various times. I think that'll be good. We're good with the audit then? We're ready to go?
We're working on preparing the final trial balance. It's due to them on October 9th, and then they'll be on site later in the month in October. So, but we're on track to get everything to them.
Okay. Anything else for the finance director?
Thanks for moving your item.
Pardon me?
Thanks for moving your item.
Oh, no problem. And I'll get you the fund balance.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. We appreciate you. Let's run through reports of officers from assigned committees. We'll start on my left, Councilman Martinson. I don't have anything. Councilman Henderson.
So I had the Shade Tree Committee meeting today and lunch, and that's my favorite committee, to be honest. I love it. So I can wear my grubby work clothes with no judgment. It's a no judgment zone. So, but things are going well. We've got a lot of trees in the city. I think Paul said we planted 70 trees and lost 30 or something. So we're increasing our amount of trees that we have in the city, and they're just doing a great job. I love meeting with those guys. It's just professionals. I love hearing what they have to say about their different parks and things that they're in charge of. And I mean, I think our parks, we can put them up with any parks in the nation, and just a good quality crew over there at the Parks Department. So.
Well said. Councilman Coates.
I don't have anything to report.
Councilman Ivy.
So for my ride along this month for fire department, I went up and met with Chief Kazir, and he's been with our department now for a year or so. And, I just had a really, really good conversation with him. Again, just really impressed with Chief Kazir and the department up there, and, the firefighters and everyone that works so hard for our city. But it was really refreshing just to have a conversation, talk about those things that are so important to protect in our city and keeping us safe. Washington City Arts Council, I want to plug again about the All About Art event. I don't know if you've been driving around, but the entire city of St. George and Hurricane, Washington, there's signs up everywhere that says All About Art. This is a really big art project. It's going to be the biggest one that's ever come to Washington City. The Art Council is working really, really hard to make it very professional and to really show the community that Washington is all about art, good quality art. So, it's been really fun to be a part of that. And also for those of you at home that's wondering about the project that was talked about earlier, the council's actually going to go do art with an artist. And then those pieces of art are going to be auctioned off, and the money's going to be given to the Dove Center. So I thought that was a really good gesture on their part. And I'm getting a jump on you. I'm going in tomorrow morning to get a jump because I'm all left-handed. I have no art ability or creative senses in my being at all.
That's cheating.
I'm all about it.
I'm gonna have to buy.
I think he's sandbagging us.
No, you just
I
wait till you see the finished product.
Just because you're on the Arts Council doesn't mean you can.
He's gonna have somebody draw it in pencil before.
Sure it does.
We need to have clear rules that the artist that is helping you cannot assist in any way, because I've been practicing.
There's no clear rules.
Whoa.
No, it needs to have clear rules, because I'm pretty sure that.
Mayor, this is my time right here.
I'll allow it.
The last thing is, and I would have hoped that Lester was here earlier, and I'd really like Lester and Blake to hear about this. But I got a call last week from a resident that lives in the fields, and they reached out and was praising. They didn't know the name of it, but they were praising the AMI metering. She had a leak under her sidewalk, and the water was actually not coming to the surface. It caught a trail, and it was undermining her driveway. After they got it shut off, they figured that she would have lost about 1,000 gallons a day, but that was notified and shut off within like 4 hours. So when you talk about taking measures to conserve water and all those important things. This was a step in the right direction. The AMI metering that was paid by impact fees, and it was really a neat conversation to have because, you know, who knows how many gallons would have ran underneath her driveway, creating other expenses, right? And so she just wanted me to share her appreciation for that innovation, and our Public Works Department for their good work on letting her know. And they actually went out and turned her water off and then notified her. So it was a good effort.
Thank you, Councilman. I agree. We're doing great with water conservation. Leading out. Councilwoman Casperson. I'll just give you a couple brief updates. I attended the Habitat Conservation Advisory Committee. And so this is for the area that's been set aside and thousands of acres to protect the desert tortoise. The community established that voluntarily based on agreement with the Department of the Interior. And we worked really hard to protect the desert tortoise. Our meeting this week, I felt like we made some great progress. We had representatives from BLM, from the Division of Wildlife Resources, and a few others. And it's been determined that, well, let me back up just a little bit. One of the things that's been a big detriment to the turtle has been wildfires. And that cheatgrass that you see kind of growing up in those desert areas is an invasive grass. It's not native, but that cheatgrass can really ignite, and then it just causes havoc for those tortoises. And those populations are really delicate. But with the good people in those agencies, they've determined that there's a weed preventive product that they can apply by helicopter in mass, and that it's determined to be very effective. And so we allocated some additional funding in partnership with other agencies that would fund to reduce that cheatgrass and those other invasive types of weeds, and allow kind of the native plants to grow and try to help protect the desert tortoise. That's, like I said, that's a voluntary effort that we do as a community. The challenge is you know, the agreement that we've had essentially with the Department of the Interior has kind of appears to potentially be falling apart on their end, which really jeopardizes the habitat for that desert tortoise. So I think at some point I'll have a representative from the county or from that group come and speak to the council. There are a lot of outside organizations, a lot of neighboring states and communities that think they want to be in Southern Utah's land business in our local decisions. And you know, sometimes I get riled up with property rights too. So we'll bring that information to the council, and the risk is with this group pushing and changing basically the rules of the game is the loser really is that desert tortoise that we worked so hard to protect. And so it's an interesting situation. Another thing I spoke to Chief Williams about, as you noticed, we were able to administer the oath of office to 2 new detectives tonight. Historically, we've had 1 investigator detective. Now we have 2. They're working on the, what do we call that overall, like gang task force, but there's an overarching before the drug and the gang. What do you call it? Special task force or something? But right now you refer to it as the drug task force.
Determine whether we call major crimes unit or
major crimes, and so Chief Williams has, you know, we've done great with major crimes and specifically with drug task force. countywide, collectively, we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick in some gang activity, and specifically with some of the juvenile gang activity. And it looks different than maybe what those of us who grew up in the 80s or before just kidding, may have dealt with. It is getting late, I'm sorry. But that, that's another thing I want to bring back to the council is there's some representation on that drug task force, and then some new information with the gang task force that I'll find the appropriate time and place to get that in front of you so that you're aware and that you kind of understand the participation that we have from Washington City through Chief Williams. I think that's, and then obviously I have some work to do with the water board, but I've got my marching orders. All right, that's all I have. Jeremy, City Manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to give an update on a couple of things, some projects, but first, just let you know that Blake Fonsbeck, our Public Works Director, is back in Washington. He's at home now, which is a really good sign. The other day I was walking into Lynn's and he was out for a drive with his wife and pulled up and talked to him for a little bit. And I think he's making really great progress every week. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers, but he's doing great. The Long Valley Water Tank has received the final right-of-way documents. So we're going to get started as soon as possible on that. That's great news. So we can stay ahead of the Long Valley Trails project and have water when people need it. I think everybody saw, I sent some pictures last week of the Washington Fields Road. That is coming along really quickly. The water, sewer, and the road construction should be completed, I'd say conservatively by the first quarter of 2024, but it's moving along really quickly. I think everybody's seen the bus stops, the pullouts along Telegraph. That's what's happening right in front of the food truck park. That's going to make things safer for the bus patrons and for motorists as that bus pulls over. So that's a really good project that's in the works. I think I don't know if everybody's seen, but over where the Flavors coffee shop is going in, our power crews have been doing some upgrades right there on those poles. It's kind of nice to see them doing visible upgrades. I think people see them all the time, but I don't see them all the time. It's great to see them out there. But they're making progress there. And then the final thing I would mention is, if you haven't been over to the new Wheels Park, they're moving a lot of dirt over there, grading our project. So go check that out sometime when you're out taking a drive around Washington Fields. But that project has started and is really moving. So,
have we heard anything about the Donutsville?
I think it's got to be close.
Got to be close.
It's got to be close.
I'm excited for that.
Speaking of desert tortoise,
the open sign is up, but it's not on yet.
They got their CO?
Michelle, would you come up to the microphone? Okay. Their CO will be next week. I'll translate for her. So we will, when it is open, we will have donuts for council meeting that night. I'll commit to that. That's all I have, Mayor.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Manager. Okay, we do have one item for closed session this evening. Character of or professional competence of an individual. I'll call for a motion to go into closed session. I have a motion by Councilman Henderson. Second by, I'm going to give that one to Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved.